Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Smudcast. We're going to be talking about something related to some fandom, some part of video games or comics or movies. You know, one of those things. We like to ramble on about those things we love. So we're just crazy like that, I guess.
No, obviously, we just ramble on about what we hate.
Yes, and we just never save what we love. We just kill everything in our path, in our ramblings.
The unrelenting fandom. The menace, as you will.
Yes, the menace, which is one of the topics for today, which is the Fandom Menace. Fake Star Wars fans? Question mark. I don't know. I think if anyone's a fan of something, and they bother to have a conversation, I think they're pretty much authentic. Whether you like something, or there's nitpicks you don't like, or there's nitpicks you do like, you're still a fan.
The accusation of like true fan is something which is. I do realize it's something which is kind of used on a lot of sides to just try and devalue what someone says. Like a true fan would like Star Wars, or a true fan wouldn't like this kind of thing.
Yeah, it comes down to your taste, how intelligent you are, how much you pay attention, whether you know the lore or not, what your focus is. Like you could really like the special effects in Babylon 5, and we'd be like, wow, really? Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, everyone has their preference. So you could love that show because of I can't remember, the Mac 10 or whatever the hell machine they were using to make those animations. But actually, no, I think it was a PC they were using. It was, man, what was the name of that? It was a free animation kit, I think. But, oh, man, that was back in the day. So, and I don't know if it was a step back from Star Trek, but it was certainly different. So you're like, wow, look at the lighting on all this stuff. It's like volumetric. Like, oh, this is fantastic. So there's lots of reasons to dislike and like something. And
I will have to watch that show someday because I've heard a lot of good things.
It is the best sci-fi show I've seen, or space opera in general. It is the standard upon which I based many other shows, TV otherwise. It's pulpy. It's sometimes episodic, but it's really, really good character writing and scenarios. And all your typical science fiction tropes that you would find anywhere, like in a Star Trek episode, just done in a much more refined and simplistic way. And that's all because of JMS, the guy who writes everything, and just does fantastic stuff. Lightwave, there it is. Thank you, RSG. I was wondering what the hell I was called. It's been a while.
I have heard of Lightwave.
Oh, it's old. I played with it a few times back in the 90s. But
I would assume there'd be newer versions because like a lot of software that we still use today have been around for a very long time. They're just being constantly updated.
Yeah, and with the advent of ZBrush, it really changed things. So once you start using that, once you start making things and the lofter technique, and you can pretty much build whatever you like without having to use a stylus. So that was like a big jump. Like, oh, you could use a stylus for more accuracy, or you can just use your mouse and start lofting your image. Like you're shaping a piece of clay, essentially. So,
ZBrush is amazing.
Yeah. So little different than or the other wonderful. I remember back in the late 90s, everyone was talking about SGI workstations because of Jurassic Park. And what was it wasn't Lightwave. It was something like, not 3ds Max. I think it was Maya, Softimage. I think those were the big ones. But yeah, lots of cool technology back in the day. Nowadays, everything's DirectX, 14, 15, 6. I don't even know what it's at these days. So it's all the same tech. Just better renderers, better shaders. So, hey, Lord Commander Dunn, how's it going, sir? Okay, you're creeping me up, but that's all right. I'm sure you're there.
Yeah, sorry. I just woke up from a nap.
Oh, good for you, sir. All right, we're going to be talking about the Fandom Menace again. It's a short little video from, what's his name? Urban Acolyte. Seems like a nice gentleman. I'm sure he'll have lots of poignant things to say about.
I'm sure he'll be extremely rational and very nice and very fair.
Yeah, we expect the best from people who like making videos about the fandom of Star Trek, or Star Wars rather. So we will see. And let's see if I can share my screen. There we are. All right, here's the actual thumbnail I just want to show you guys before we started. So here we have.
Is he gonna just say that people who don't like this are just gonna be Trump supporters? You've got fucking Mauler in the background.
I know, yeah. There's Mahler up here. You got Nerdrotic. There's Wolf. You got
Rags.
Gamers. There's Star Wars Girl. There's Doomcock.
Rags.
Oh, what does Trump have to do? Why is the Obi-Wan there?
Wait, Blockbuster Buster isn't there? Blockbuster Buster isn't in the Phantom Menace.
Why is there a Yoda? Like just Yoda just behind Jar Jar.
What I'm really surprised at is like, why is like Blockbuster Buster is like, he's firmly left leaning. Like he's like he thinks Batwoman is okay. Like
Try to spot all the people in it.
Yeah, I
I
don't
saw
know.
it N7 logo and I was hoping it was going to be you, but I think that would probably be more like if it was going to somebody to represent you, it would probably be fucking actual Shepherd.
Yeah, I see an N7 logo right near Trump's hand there, but other than that, yeah, I don't know who that is, but
there's Bastila Shan for some reason, not Bastila Shan, Satila Shan.
yeah.
Star Wars Theory?
Star Wars Theory isn't part of the Fandom Menace. He's just a fan. He's been critical of the films, but that he's never openly identified. In fact, he's often defended people like Eric Butts.
He also liked Rise of Skywalker.
Did he? I knew he didn't like The Last Jedi.
He said like, I was like, I saw it and he was like, it was good. I was really satisfied with this one. Rey was a Palpatine. My theory was confirmed.
Really?
I was like, I need to watch it. I turned off all right, not watching this.
But is he going to try and say that they're Trump supporters? Spoiler, I don't really care about Trump at all. So you're already fucking debunked there, mate.
Anyway, I just thought it'd be interesting to look at the wallpaper he made. I don't know how long it took to compile all those images.
Probably it's just like constantly screenshotting every little tiny icon.
Yeah, so he puts a lot of effort into his thumbnails, guys. So that's obviously takes some time and effort and care. Something I never do. So
he's definitely missing a number of the ladies of the Fandom Menace. Like he's not missing Mary Mayhem. She's in the middle, but he's missing people like Minority Home, as far as I can see.
Maybe they're covered up. Maybe they're covered up by the.
Give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got some. Anyway, I thought that was funny. Let me just go to the video now. There he is.
So, because you haven't heard any news about what's going on with Ryan's trilogy doesn't mean it's not happening.
Okay.
If they are staying extremely quiet about something, they are trying to put it under the rug.
Now, this was made in June 4th, 2019. So it's been well over a year. I don't think we've heard anything about Ryan's trilogy.
So at first they were like, oh my god, look, we're announcing a project. It's going to be done by this guy, Rian Johnson. It's going to be fucking great. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, what? Sorry. We don't hear anything. Just ignore me just sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah, pay no attention to the round head behind the curtain.
I just realized he has one of those, what are those called? Blue balls or snowballs? What are those things?
Snowball or Blue Yeti or something like
Blue
that.
Yeti, there you go.
Blue balls.
Well, it's called a Blue Yeti. It's a blue ball.
A blue ball.
There you go. Anyway.
The current word on the street is that Dave and Dan's trilogy and Ryan Johnson's trilogy are going to be related.
Word on the street is that fucking dead. Dumb and dumbass got their fucking asses booted out because they completely fucked up Game of Thrones. I don't think their trilogy's still happening. Hello,
also sounds like you're having a good time already.
Yeah. Also,
it's only 18 seconds in. Okay, can we show the thumbnail again?
Also, if Disney looks into their hiring their spending practices, they are ridiculously bad with money. Like, it's insane how much
they
money they
spend to just waste money on a fucking space cow that's in one scene. That spend millions constructing it, spend millions flying over and shipping it, and then constructing it, then filming with it, and it's a complete animatronic. And they have to do so many things because it's like a preserved site, so they have to spend even more money because of that. And then for fucking Ryan Johnson, not Ryan, for the Solo film, they have this really weird vampire slug for no fucking reason, and they spent so much fucking money on it. They just hey, look, here's a thing, let's throw money at it. Hey, look, here's a thing that's only here for like a couple scenes. Let's build a giant set. It's one of the biggest Star Wars sets ever constructed. Why? We need it for 5 seconds. You could have easily just done fucking CGI. Considering how advanced CGI is these days, you could just spend the money on CGI to extend a fucking set, and you don't need to build this entire fucking casino that you only spend a tiny part in. It's ridiculous.
Here's an interesting take from Taker 610. Acolyte, a person assisting the celebrant in a religious procession. Cue the Princess Bride.
It's trying to the Acolyte in Star Wars is like a Sith apprentice, and he's trying to do the Star Wars urban. I supposed to mean I don't know. Is that supposed to be relating to his race? Acolyte's supposed to be relating to Star Wars because he does Star Wars content. Anyway,
let's rewind it just for LiteratureDevil to hear this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, we show the thumbnail as well because the thumbnail.
Well, the thumbnail. You want to see that?
Oh, okay.
Honestly, the Dumb and Dumber, they think that it would be interrelated. No, Dumb and Dumber, Disney doesn't know how to make
word on the street is Dumb and Dumber. Their trilogies are going to be related, and it's like
What does the Fandom Menace to do with Trump?
I don't know.
I still don't know. We're getting there though. I guess I don't know. Hard to say.
So, because you haven't heard any news about what's going on with Ryan's trilogy doesn't mean it's not happening. The current word on the street is
Why would you want it to happen? Why would you ever want that to happen?
That was a year ago.
He's a huge fan of it.
Yeah,
that happened a year ago. So nothing. We've heard nothing of it. So I don't think it's happening.
All right, really guys, we're getting more poison. I really hope we get more poison.
I want to know.
That'd be awesome.
I want to know what this guy thinks of Game of Thrones season 8. Honestly,
Dave and Dan's trilogy and Ryan Johnson's trilogy are going to be related. It's essentially going to be 6 movies that are telling one big story.
Can you imagine the amount of money for 2 trilogies to come at the same time? Are you crazy?
that is really not a good plan, especially like David and Dan do not collaborate well. They did not have a writer's room. It was just them writing the show and then passing directives. And even then they made they didn't edit their stuff because they make basic continuity errors in their scripts.
It's impossible to maintain continuity.
Also, the quotation marks word on the street, he's fucking pulling this out of his ass. He doesn't even have a fucking... He's not even hiding behind it's a rumor like Doomcock does. He's just straight up pulling ass word on the street. He's like, you have a reference, maybe an article, or are you going to say that you heard it from someone, you can explain, or you're just going to say, oh, well, yeah, I heard this thing. Where the fuck did you hear it, mate?
Sounds like you're pulling stuff out of your butthole.
Exactly.
Or out of JJ's infinite butthole.
Oh, I heard a theory.
I'm sure he's got something else to share aside from this wonderful revelation. They're going to be related. They're going to actually do it. Yeah, okay.
Right. Now, Ryan Johnson said his trilogy is not going to have anything to do with the Skywalker saga. It's going to be in a new part of space that's never been explored. Nothing.
Okay, so if it's not going to be in the Star Wars galaxy, what's the fucking point of it being a Star Wars film? Please explain this to me. If we're not going to have anything to do with Star Wars, what's the point?
I just want to know how we jumped from talking or about to talk about fake Star Wars fans. We just jumped straight into the trilogies all of a sudden. What is going on with this video? Is he just rambling on about the news? And he's going to ramble into talking about fans of Star Wars?
I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Rian Johnson's an idiot, this and that, because I saw somebody say that in the comments. Rian Johnson might know more about Star Wars than you do, than I.
Okay. What you said, and it must be true. Though I highly doubt that. I really highly doubt that. That's such an accusation to make. He might know more about Star Wars.
Whenever you say that about a fan, it's like that's not a good take. Don't try to challenge a fan on what they know.
And also, like, guys, Sam Witwer himself said Rian Johnson did not do his Star Wars homework.
Sam Witwer, the voice of fucking Darth Maul, the mega fan. He is a fucking huge, insane fan. He's on the level of
Dave Filoni.
Like Dave Filoni. I'd also say, what's his name, who played Geralt in Witcher?
Henry Cavill?
Henry Cavill. He's also a Henry Cavill levels fan, and they're huge geeks. So, yeah, I would take it from him.
Like how his whole argument is, these guys didn't like it, therefore Rian Johnson is smarter than them. Like, so they didn't like Rian Johnson's movie because Rian Johnson is just too smart for all these dumb fanboys.
Well, we haven't. He's just sort of rhyming stuff off right now. It's kind of funny, so I'm waiting for him to say something.
So here's the thing: I fucking hate Star Wars fans.
Yeah,
I do than any of them, except for maybe Alex and Molly, because Alex knows everything about Star Wars. Apparently, when it comes to Star Wars trivia, I mean, he put that power that Luke Skywalker had, and I have the Jedi Padawan handbook or whatever, and I didn't even recognize. I was like, "Whoa, that's." I mean,
one second. Give me a second. I've got a book. I think I know what he's talking about. I've got a book behind me. Is he referring to this, the Jedi Handbook? So, who's the writer of this? Give me a second.
So, a certain skill that Luke has.
No, he's referring to a book, like someone who's written a book, I think. Who'd refine it for a second? What do you say?
All right.
I got some of the same people who argue that it's fiction, he can do whatever he wants. Also argue that he knows more than you because it's actually canon in a book somewhere that has never been introduced in any of the films ever. So it's when it's convenient, he can do everything he wants because it's fiction. And when it's also convenient, it's canon, so you must shut up.
So I've got the Jedi Path, the sacred Jedi text from Legends, and I want to see if this is the author here that he's talking about. So what's the name he said?
He never said a name. Let's just go back.
On handbook or whatever, and I didn't even and I have the Jedi Padawan handbook or whatever, and I didn't even recognize. I was like, "Whoa, that's." I mean, I told you guys that's a.
So he's only referring to this book. He's not saying that they're the author of this book. He's just mentioning some kind of friend of his. I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, Christian mystic.
Even if that was in the handbook, it's because it was in the movie and in the handbook at the same time. Doesn't mean that it was okay to be there.
Okay, so the handbook itself is it's Legends material. It's the Jedi Path.
So it's non-canon.
It's non-canon, and it's basically a big book talking about Star Wars, Jedi, and stuff. And it's being written as if it was in the universe, and it's got all kinds of really interesting. It's the thing is, it's supposed to be like a book which you give to your Padawan. And then they'll give it to their Padawan, then they'll give it to their Padawan. So it's got notes from Yoda, then it's got notes from Dooku, then it's got notes from Qui-Gon, then it's got notes from Obi-Wan, then it's got notes from Anakin, then it's got notes from Ahsoka, and then it's fallen into the hands of Palpatine, so Palpatine's got his notes in here, and then it's fallen into the hands of Luke.
But just because the movie exists doesn't mean it wasn't used in a very stupid manner in the movie. I mean, we know for a fact that Force lightning exists. We saw it in the original trilogy. We know it exists. It actually actually trumps the other move because it's actually been shown on film. But doesn't mean it wasn't stupid when the Emperor just shot lightning up into the air to take down an entire fleet. It was still dumb. It doesn't matter if it's canon or not. A canonical move that Jedi and Sith can do.
Why didn't he just do that on the Death Star? Like he just
used. It was
Like
misused.
Palpatine just opens up a window and it's like, and he starts like force lightning an entire fleet. He could
Hey,
do
no,
it there.
sunroof.
Why couldn't he do it here? Yeah, just have
The
a
actual
Death Star
sunroof.
sunroof. Why the fuck does he need a Death Star? He can just point his lightning at things.
So I don't know who's stoked for an untitled Star Wars film in a few years' time. I forgot there was a schedule that they were sticking
Yeah.
to.
The whole schedule's been fucked.
Yeah, Rich.
The
Yeah,
coronavirus
like-
has pushed the whole schedule back, I think, a whole 2 years.
Mhm.
So it's going to be even longer before we get a Star Wars film, which surprisingly I'm very happy about because it gives them time to go home and rethink their life. Oh, Alex, which is Star Wars Explained. Ah, yeah, Star Wars. Do any of you know about Star Wars Explained? In there,
Who's Molly? He was referring to Molly as well.
I don't know who Molly is, but do any of you know who who started where? The fuck's sake, know who he is. Star
Pretty
Wars
sure,
Explained.
yeah.
He's a very strange person to say the least. And so he's came out against a lot of the fandom, and so I believe one of the things he came
He's the one
against
that
was,
blocked everybody, right?
Jeremy from he blocked a bunch of people, and because he blocked Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, he got Xsky the Ladder to contact Jeremy to basically create a sort of quotation marks peace treaty between them, so they wouldn't stop they'll stop sniping each other. And I was with Jeremy I was with Geeks and Gamers at this time when this was happening, so I was actively talking with Jeremy. And he was explaining all this shit to me, and he was showing me these messages by him, and I was like, "What peace treaty? Why the hell is he committed peace treaty? Just don't be dicks to each other. How about that?" And then, he continued to snipe. He's a huge fan of John Oliver, so he created a show called Last Week in Clickbait, where he's basically trying to rip apart all these fan videos talking about the Star Wars. So it's like, oh my god, look at these, they're just clickbait. He's talking about Rian Johnson's trilogy, but he's a fuckwit. He's an absolute fucking ass.
Alrighty.
That I've read up a lot about. I got a bunch. I think I've got pretty much probably almost every book that's been written about him. And his daughter used to write me, and she'd invited me to come out to Cyprus and study and train with them in their meditation. So I know his material pretty well. So when I saw what Luke did, I was like, oh, that's like what Daskalos was teaching in this book, these books that I've been reading on and off over the years. But I didn't.
You read it in a book.
Like, wow, that's cool.
Therefore, it works. That fixes everything, guys. He read a book once.
Didn't Disney declare all the EU non-canon?
Yes.
So why are they using the EU for canon?
Yeah. Not to mention, I've read the Jedi Path, and it's nothing to do with The Last Jedi. Like, there's literally nothing in this book I'm holding right now that has anything to do with the fucking Last Jedi.
So what is he actually talking about that Luke did that's in this book?
I don't fucking know.
Okay.
The only thing I can possibly tie to this is that it's fucking the sacred Jedi texts.
The sacred Jedi texts.
It's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
Luke has the book I'm holding right now. Oh my god.
Oh,
That's like
speaking
the
of Luke,
book.
did anyone see that new Doomcock video where he explains that the new Lego Star Wars is going to have a nice Christmas special where Rey goes back in time and teaches Luke the ways of the Force?
Fuckers. You motherfuckers. Stop.
Time
Merry
travel?
Christmas, everyone.
Stop. Just stop.
Time travel.
Why? Why would you do... Fuck off.
Okay, that sounds a little far-fetched even for me.
Oh gosh.
Time travel. Come on, that's yeah.
Also, not only the Force, but how to use lightsaber and chew bubble gum and stuff. Oh, and shave. She teaches Luke how to shave.
Wait.
So,
Okay, that's too silly. That's just too silly. That can't be real. Okay, let's just mosey on down to this video and keep going.
They put that in Star Wars, but I didn't know. Oh, that's already in a Star Wars resource guide. Wow, man,
mean
that
the
was a deep
non-canon
cut,
one?
man.
The
Ryan.
non-canon forms? I mean, all the books?
You mean a non-canon book because Disney declared them non-canon? Uh-huh. Go on, please.
Yeah. Rationalize, please. Let's hear it.
Ryan is a big Star Wars fan. Just because you might not have liked the movie that he put out, that doesn't, like I said, don't fall
The way
for the no
he's
true Scotsman
actively
mentality.
acted towards Star Wars fans, they fucking shaft he hands up his own fucking ass.
I don't
I
think
highly,
his fandom is at question. It's his competency as a storyteller.
yeah, but
Yes.
purely the way he acts towards the fandom, I don't even think a fan would constantly degrade and insult people who just didn't like a film he made to this extent. Like, you know, if he hadn't started saying all the things outside of the material, I'd be more than happy to believe he's a Star Wars fan. But why would he be treating people like this? You know, why would he be constantly degrading people who didn't like the film he made if he was a true fan? If he would truly love this thing?
Let's see. That does not make him any less of a Star Wars fan. You get what I'm saying?
If
Like,
you are degrading
just 'cause
Star
you
Wars
don't like what
fans,
some
He
I'll
may
be
as well,
honest, go
he
fuck
may as well be
yourself.
talking about he's not a fan of pizza. You know, it doesn't make him any less fan of it. It's like, I don't care what he eats for lunch. I don't care what he's really well versed in. He made a crap movie. Okay? Address that. Address why we don't like him. Not necessarily personally. We don't know him personally. Why we don't like his work. That's all. We don't care if he's I don't care if he's a Steelers fan. I don't care if he likes the Queen of England. It doesn't make a difference to me.
somebody doesn't make them not a fan. It just means that they have different interests in you, right? Just like the guy that came in my living room called Luke Skywalker pussy, right? It doesn't make him any less of a
What?
fan, because then we started
So
talking about
who-
Thor, and he
What?
Well, that's fine.
Wait, who came into your living room and just started talking about Luke?
He insulted Luke Skywalker, and then he's like, "Oh, it's fine because he liked Thor." But Thor's not part of the Star Wars universe. Okay.
I'm just. Did someone break into your house? Are you okay? I'm an acolyte. Did someone break into your house and then just start talking Star Wars with you? It's like, oh, cool, I'm robbing your house, but you've got an action figure. Oh, yeah, I love Star Wars. I fucking love Star Wars too. I don't like the sequel trilogy, though. It's like, oh, yeah, I love the sequel trilogy. And then just debate some random guy who came in his sitting room. That was so out of nowhere. No context to anything.
That's fine. He's telling a story about this one conversation he had. That's fine. But the point is he's trying to make is that just because they disagree does not make him not a Star Wars fan.
he geeked out on Thor, and I kind of wonder if that says something about the fact that he didn't like any women characters, and then Thor, he almost jizzed on the floor talking about Thor. And I mean, I'm not, maybe that's somebody listening. I'm not saying that says anything about him, like, oh man, he must be some kind of white supremacist or something. He likes the blonde hair, blue eye.
Wait. Let's slow down here.
That is no. You were implying he was some kind of racist there.
So doesn't
That's what you're implying.
Doesn't like women in a comic book, therefore white supremacist. I don't. Whoa.
It's perfectly fine. Okay, it's perfectly fine in society to hate Luke Skywalker. That's not what gets you called racist or sexist or whatever. It's disliking Rey that gets you. That's the brave stance to take. That's what gets you called sexist and racist and all that kinds of stuff. Okay, and so you can hate Luke Skywalker with impunity. You'll probably get celebrated for it. That's not the brave stance to take. It's hating Rey or disliking Rey, disliking Finn, or disliking Poe, or disliking Rose. Now those get you called all kinds of flavor of bigot. Okay, hating Luke Skywalker, not a brave thing to do.
But hey, you like Thor and you don't like these other characters? Well, I think that might say something about him. He might be some kind of white supremacist.
I still don't see the connection, but okay. I mean, this is how they think. I'm gonna say, all right, sir, whatever. I'm just gonna keep going. It's fine.
Guy and the hammer and doesn't like Captain Marvel, and I'm just saying, like, maybe when we talk about seeing the best version of yourself, maybe at some point in time he saw Luke Skywalker and was like, that used to be who I aspired to be, the best version of me. But this Luke Skywalker and what I view as the best version of myself, those don't line up. But Thor, Thor lines up with the best version of me, of who I aspire to be.
Really, you associate yourself with a Norse god? Okay.
No, he's implying that this person he was talking to associated with this Norse god, and he was implying that this other guy could only this other person he was talking to that didn't like Luke but did like Thor. He's saying that he could identify and see himself in Thor. He could identify and see himself in younger Luke, but he couldn't identify and see himself in older Luke.
That is really, really reaching for explanation of why someone likes something over something else.
This is
this is random guessing of what this guy's like motivations are,
as well as like just rambly and incoherent.
Okay, this makes random stabs in the dark. Oh well, he could believe in white genocide, but then he could also believe in fucking blue balls. Then he could also, the reason why he could be doing this is because he's a fucking psychopath. Well, I just don't know.
Being that, I love Thor. Thor is my favorite. Even the dude Thor, the dude.
He's about to say Fat Thor.
Right? Cut Thanos' head off, right? Cut his arm off, and then cut his head off, right? Or the dude Thor. Thor, he's messing with me again, right? What was that the Korg said? And Thor takes the phone. Hello, this is Thor, god of thunder, son of Odin. Noob Master 69, if you don't leave my friend alone, I will come to your house, I will rip off your arms, and I will shove them up your butt. That's why y'all should be on my City of Heroes streams. I said that so many times on here. Noob Master 69, if you don't...
Okay. Is he talking about a movie, I'm assuming?
He's talking about Endgame. He's saying, oh my god, I love Thor. I love Thor in Endgame. He says, he refers to Fat Thor as Dude Thor or Bro Thor. And he's like, I love this moment where he talks to someone in Fortnite and makes him cry. And he's, what this hasn't got anything to do with anything. It's like, that's why you should watch my streams because I quote every 5 seconds.
I don't know if you guys can read the chat on the top right hand corner. There's a guy called Sean. I think diversity in stories is they tell a great story that reveals people deep inside. Diversity then becomes what people draw from that story. It's like that has nothing to do with diversity.
This is how Star Wars became successful.
Diversity has nothing to do with what's inside. It has everything to do with what's on the outside, looking a certain way. Oh, look, that's a black woman and there's a white. Oh, there's such a diverse film.
Yeah, like the idea of race and gender, that's purely on the outside of someone. Like, it legitimately is on the outside.
That's not what Star Wars is. It's never been what Star Wars is or was.
This is really dumb. This feels so weird.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, at least we're getting through this quickly. We're only like 30 minutes in.
Yeah, I know. We're almost done.
I'll probably focus on the other video. That's why
there's no substance. You're like,
this is dumb. It's kind of funny that he is fanboying so hard, but and like bringing up so many random incoherent arguments. But like, I guess it's short.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave my friend alone. I will rip off your arms and I will shove them up your butt. I love Thor, man, but I made a program about
the same thing over and again, or did you spend the time?
He did.
Oh my god, he repeats it twice.
Thor, the hammer of Thor, and then once I saw Endgame, I told the guys, I was like, yeah, maybe I ought to. They were like, Prince, I think Thor needs to get on your program. I think Thor needs to get some kettlebells and do this program. But I'm just saying, like, when we look at this stuff, people look at it and they see it through their lenses. Their lenses are not your lenses. They got it from what did I say?
Their lenses are not your lenses.
I think he's trying to say everyone's perspective is different.
I know what he's trying to say, but he's saying it in a weird way. Like, their lenses I know your lens. Yeah, or you could say everyone sees something in a different perspective, and then there's these people's lenses are different to your lenses. Everyone's lenses are different. It's like just say it coherently, man. Fuck, it's like explain to people efficiently.
All right. It's a dude who makes videos about Star Wars and that, and went to 100,000 subscribers in a year. Some of y'all might watch him and watch me too. I guess you like polar opposites. I don't know. And I like the stuff he says. I don't even want to have a conversation with him. But I don't say he's not a real fan. I joke and say there's Star Wars fans out there who hate Star Wars. I understand.
No, fuck you. No. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Star Wars fans, would they? They just dislike new Star Wars.
I'm trying to wonder what the heck he's like.
He's pulling out the age-old argument of no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. That's been fucking repeated over and over again to the point where I want to bash the argument into a wall because it's incredibly stupid and
Star Wars fans hate things that Disney has done with Star Wars because they destroyed it. They obliterated it.
And they also dislike the prequels because the prequels are very poorly written. They are very fucking poorly written. It's not just okay. If these were things which were legitimately extremely well written and they were made incredibly well, then you know what? Yes, it would be that people just aren't happy. But do you want to know why they're not happy? It's because they are poorly written. And we can look at these things and we can point out all the writing flaws. We can point out a mile long of fucking writing flaws.
Can we just stop? Can they stop blaming the fans for all the failure of Star Wars and start blaming the writers and the creative teams? Maybe it's their fault. Maybe they had a hand in this.
His business model, he says he's a media company, right? And he's
who is he talking about?
Rewind.
Yeah, so I'd like to order a rare steak or medium rare steak. Oh, here's your steak, sir. Well, it is well done. Obviously, no one hates steak like steak fans does.
Yeah.
No, it's not even well done. It's fucking moldy with random shit that's been poured all over it, and it's like it's got a fucking sticker. It's like, what is this mess?
Can't be the fact that the steak has been poorly prepared. It must be because you just hate steak. You just hate women. You just hate XYZ minority. That's what it is. Can't be the fact that the product was bad. That's a no-no.
Fans out there who hate Star Wars, I understand his business model. He says he's a media company, right?
I think he's talking about Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers.
All right, that's fine, but he didn't say that.
I know.
He's the Fox News version. He's reporting
the Fox News version.
Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers is Fox News.
What?
This guy and Mundane Match do a collab together.
I don't know. I think Mundane Match far too dead for this guy.
What are you talking? Who are you talking about? What's going on? D&D and Ryan Johnson making movies together. Trilogy is like what?
This book exists in non-canon. This book is non-canon. It exists, but Ryan Johnson knows about it. Therefore, he obviously knows more than every Star Wars fan ever. Obviously.
Yeah, freaking right.
This book that this guy admits that he has, that Shiny has, that pretty much every fan has. I don't think his claim that Ryan Johnson knows more about Star Wars than Star Wars fans really holds water when he himself happens to own the thing. Shiny happens to own the thing, and probably a lot of hardcore dedicated Star Wars fans also probably own the thing.
Fox News version of media. Let's get everybody outraged and create controversies.
No, because people are already outraged. So I understand that. Again, I've met Jeremy. I've had conversations with him. So I do understand that he is someone who is, I guess, can be quite extreme. But that's because he's angry. And that's because something he's very passionate about is actively being besmirched. And that's something we can all relate with. Do you know why? Because everything we love is being besmirched. And then he'll go out and he'll see an article which is talking shit about Star Wars fans, and he'll be even more enraged, and then he'll go out and make a video about it, and then he'll share what people have been saying around, and then they'll be outraged because people are saying this shit. So he's actively just sharing around the things people have been saying, articles, tweets. He's not misconstruing anything. He's actually just reporting on something else. And while he is upset, he's upset for a very valid reason. He can maybe construct himself a little bit better, and that's something I've personally criticized him on, but still, I can understand his outrage.
Clicks. That is smart. What I do, I'm not really trying to create any controversies. I'm just trying to explain things the way I see them, right? And that's not really going to be all that popular. Now, who knows? Hey, in Tai Chi, we talk about
because you explain it very poorly.
Overcoming hard. And I'm really trying to focus on this Tai Chi way of living my life, really. But even with my business, my training business, that Lauren, that's where I said, like, you know, the kind of the women's program. It's not necessarily a women's program. It's just not macho. It's not talking about becoming the strongest version of yourself from a macho way of thinking. Like, get in there, against all odds, no pain, no gain, lift these heavy weights and tear your body down. You know, you got to do it this way and work out till you puke and pass out.
Is he talking about Tai Chi?
I don't know.
What is he talking about? What is going on with this man? He's just saying random. He's just saying random, incoherent, juvenile nonsense.
He's like, oh yeah, Tai Chi. You've got to build yourself up. You can do that. What has fucking any shit got to do with Tai Chi?
I don't know. Maybe there's some new regiment of training he's doing for his job. I wish I could tell you. This is so strange.
Are these segments from his live stream or something that he's cut up like what Monday Matt does?
No, this is worse. This is just a random. I have no idea.
Well,
Monday Matt has a goal. He has a
chat.
Focus, but it's still.
It does have a live chat.
Yeah, so I would assume that he's just doing this on a live stream. He'll sit there for an hour and he'll rant, and then he'll just cut it up and then turn that into videos.
Oh, all right. Well, that's again. He's making a living. This thing has how many views from a year ago? Almost 4,000. So obviously, you know, it wasn't very popular back then. He's got 65K subs. He's pretty big. So this is obviously not a popular video of his. If you look at the actual likes and dislike ratio, it's 235 to 110. So it's kind of in the middle, or a third way. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost done.
Yeah, I'm not really about that, right? And that's one reason I'm kind of backing away from the kettlebell training, because some days I'm like, I don't feel like lifting these kettlebells and you know, tearing my body
some
up.
Days I don't feel like working out.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel like, you know, just sitting back and having some pizza and what the fuck is this on about? What how random is this?
So the Fandom Menace, they don't lift kettlebells, but sometimes I don't either. It's like, what are you doing?
Sometimes I don't like to lift weights.
Fake Star Wars fans? It's like, he has said barely anything about fake Star Wars fans. Also, just that really confrontational thumbnail turned out to be just like clickbait, essentially.
That was a lot of effort in that thumbnail. That was a lot of copying and pasting and editing and resizing. So, yeah, I think he put more effort in the thumbnail than the actual video.
Well, I have no idea what any of this has to do with Trump. We're talking about Star Wars and the Fandom Menace. So Trump, right? So Vegeta, right?
Yeah, it's like with Vegeta.
Or like wouldn't it is that T-shirt because it's Tony Montana with Vegeta, and you look at its face, and is that the juxtaposition of the Dark Prince mirroring with the immigrant story of Tony Montana, and they're like, juxtapahoo. Screw you, movie Bob. I hope you rot in hell with the Nazis you hate so much.
Like some kind of yoga type thing. That's what I got today. I just want to move. Right?
What?
Yoga.
What are you talking about? I just want to move. Where are you going?
I don't feel like this right now. I'm just gonna move. Let's get some yoga thing.
Oh my! Who gave me this video? I have to go find you. In my suggestions. Like, what
I
are
will
you-
find you. Okay, I can look it up for you. I'm gonna search.
This is crazy.
I will find him. I will find him.
want to hop on him. I want to hop on him.
This is a man rambling. You want me to analyze this? Yeah, he's rambling. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I can't make sense of it. There's nothing to.
We could always
to talk
do
about.
the Fandom Menace. Destroyed the Star Wars fandom after this, because I guess that's also related. But maybe, hopefully, that will have something better in this. So this was
Benzo.
recommended by Benzo H. Yeah, he recommended. Oh yeah, I will. I just found it in Discord just then.
Well, it's been interesting to say the least. It's been a weird mental psychedelic trip.
Well, it's just hopefully he has something to finish this off with because I can't believe we sat through this.
On a flow, right? Like the force flows.
Okay.
And that's essentially where my
Yes.
training is going.
All
My
right.
training program.
All right,
And
man. Okay.
I found the people who like that the most are
Have you
women.
taken
So,
your cruise
hey
pills
man, if
today?
you're a dude out there, I'm gonna tell y'all later on how to hit me up if you're interested in the
If you're a
coaching
dude,
stuff.
I'll tell you. I'll
right?
tip you.
Not any cookie cutter programs. Everybody will have individual stuff, right? But that's I'll talk more about that once I wrap up.
What? That was what the? He just ends the video. What?
What? That's it? Wow.
Oh my god! I don't know what the hell we just watched, guys. I'm so sorry. That was.
Friend Madarky said, "Watch Movie Bob as a palate cleanser."
No.
We
No,
could just-
I refuse.
Well,
No.
we could always just watch his like 6-minute Game of Thrones video. Like it's
Oh.
kind of hilarious.
No.
Like,
We need something to actually cover properly. I think we've got enough time. This has only been 40 minutes. And I think the only other one which kind of relates to this I can see in suggestions is the one I put in private chat, which, see, look at the title again.
All right,
Yeah.
Outer Rim Cantina. It's also a year old. 4,000 views as well. I guess we can do that one. It's 8 minutes. That's pretty short.
okay.
Hopefully there'll be something to talk about here. Maybe there'll be some kind of argument. But, we don't check these videos before we vote on them, which we probably should.
All right, let's see what we got here.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Outer Rim Cantina.
I'm already
My name's
regretting
Alan,
this.
and today I wanted to talk about the cult of the Star Wars fandom calling themselves the Fandom Menace, and how they have single-handedly destroyed the Star Wars
cult.
community. Not Disney, and not Ryan Johnson.
Yeah,
The
it's all
fandom
their
has
fault
been
It's
because
the
they have to be
fan
passionate.
fault, guys.
It's the fans' fault because they're passionate about their passion, and it's all their fault for ruining the community because they're angry that something they love is being demolished.
What did the fans do?
Oh man.
They had an
Bird.
opinion. That
Guys,
was
I'm on my phone here, and today I'm talking about the Star Wars Fandom Menace.
They didn't loyally consume. They
The-
didn't obey, bend the knee, and then just consume like good fans. They actually had a mind of their own and had an opinion that was not approved by the state.
He's
So
just
here's the
talking to
thing.
his phone for like 10 minutes. This
I fucking hate the Fandom Menace. They're ruining lives every day. They're destroying people. The fact that they exist probably means we failed as a society. I'm embarrassed to be white. What did Quentin say?
you didn't watch. You only bought one ticket. What's wrong with you? You're not a fan. Like, what?
I think it was funny when fans petitioned to go watch. Like, it was a very small petition. It got barely fucking anything. They tried to get a petition for people to go watch the film again to try and boost the box office. To get multiple tickets.
A
Really?
petition. How are they going to enforce that petition?
I don't know.
It's a free market. Unfortunately for them, it's a free market.
I think it was just spreading the idea of buying more fucking tickets.
I mean, they can get 1 billion people to sign that. It's not going to make It's not going to make people go and watch it again. And people who do watch it again for that reason probably didn't need the urging in the first place.
It was very bizarre.
All right, so this guy's obviously he's got all kinds of Star Wars posters on his walls and toys. He's a real fan. Okay, All right.
Online since about 2015 with the release of The Force Awakens, but didn't rise to infamy until late 2017 and early 2018 with the release of The Last Jedi.
He's reading this off
This group
something
of
under his
Star
phone.
Wars fans, and I use that term very lightly here, seem to think they are somehow the good guys and are trying to save Star Wars from the evils of Disney. Basically, that just means constantly posting online about how much they hated The Last Jedi and how much they hate Disney 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for almost 2 years now.
Yeah, so
Wait.
you wrote this whole script and started speaking into your phone? Is that what I'm getting across?
Do you really want to watch this guy for?
I mean, I don't. There's got to be something we can cover.
Oh my god!
There's got to be something. What was the other one in the list? That
At least it'll be quick.
We'll
yeah.
be quick. That's true. Yeah. Okay.
It was this same group of fans that spent their time online bullying both Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran until they deleted all of their social media accounts.
Okay,
Very
Jeremy
reminiscent
from
of what
Geeks and Gamers did not harass anyone. That Star Wars girl not harassed anyone. Nerderotic not harassed anyone. Mauler not harassed anyone. Rags not harassed anyone. LiteratureDevil not harassed anyone. Smudboy not harassed anyone. Fucking Doomcock not harassed anyone. All these people have not fucking done shit. Fuck off.
Is he just following a bullet points? Like none of these thoughts are his original thoughts. These are the same thoughts that every single anti-Fandom Menace person has, almost in the exact same order. I would bet.
He's written this like under his phone, like a PSA, like this big script. This is a public service announcement. These fans did not become popular until 2018, after the release of The Last Jedi. They have been harassing and creating videos 24/7, or all hours a day, 20 days a week. They're ruining people's lives. They're destroying.
They're debunking your happiness.
They're debunking our happiness.
How about we cover a Renegade Cut Star Wars Rise of Skywalker video? It just came out.
Oh, that one's really bland. Like,
Oh, yeah?
It's basically just it's got nothing. It's basically just about like robot. It's basically just like automated luxury. It doesn't have anything to do with the movie. I watched it. It's 8 minutes. Like I guess we could watch it, but it's.
We'll leave it to the chat. How about this? So, chat, put 1 if you want us to keep doing this. Put 2 if you want to do something else.
Oh dear.
Hey, Glib.
Glib.
You missed whatever, like 40 minutes of cringe and a guy going on about random things.
So the usual.
Yeah, a lot of people want to do a different video now and then we started covering this. Should we just play like just a few? Okay, since we're going to change, can we just play a couple seconds with Glib?
You don't have to play for me. You don't have to play for me.
No,
he did to actors like Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd in 1999 and the early 2000s with the release of The Phantom Menace. And
I think that's enough. You kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
So I just think we'll probably to vet these suggestions before we vote on them, because we've just chosen 2 not very good videos in a row.
Well, I kind of put my faith in the people who come to Discord and want us to cover things, and we're like, okay.
I'm putting a lot of faith in random people who just send videos. It's probably best to vet. Yeah, you've got to vet these things.
Oh boy, we have Jesse Jenner talking about Lower Decks for 21 minutes.
What was the one that I wanted to vote on?
You wanted Steve Shies, which is a 34-minute video or 35-minute video. We could do that one.
Yeah, I think that would be funnier.
The first half ad's good. The rest is just boring as hell.
Well, because it is the fun of listening to somebody wonder if Star Trek is justifying terrorism. That's pretty hilarious.
Alrighty, let's get that Steve Shives going.
The problem, I think, is that we need to find videos that are not just going to be like stupid takes, because a lot of the dumb takes we've covered, Yeah.
There's only a certain amount of time, like a certain amount of times you can actually laugh at these people. You need to actually have something of a bit more substance.
Well, these people, it's like, I mean, I don't even know how to. I don't even think it's like a group. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of different bad takes. Is basically what we're going for.
Oh yeah, I think these people is in like a very general term of the people we cover.
Yeah, okay. and then I know what you mean. And then at the same time, I feel like there's also some other videos that might be interesting for us to all talk about, since we all like stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, we dislike stuff.
No, obviously we
respond to
just
it, we
hate
like stuff.
everything. We just hate
Yeah.
everything, Glib.
I think the thing that brings us all together is that we're creatives.
Hate
And
can
we
move
should talk about
mountains.
that.
I strongly believe the hate can move mountains.
There's a good bit from the Charlie Brooker show that he used to do with Doug Stanhope, and he says, "Spite is a powerful motivator." And I agree.
So thank you, Andrew Clark. I'm going to write that down for whatever she wrote. I'll check that out later. But here's Steve Shives from 2020 in July.
That's what I'm saying. It's recent. It's relevant. It's like less than a month ago.
All right.
Steve Shives syndrome.
For all the ways in which it calls to us, the audience, to change our world for the better within the context of their own world.
What's that?
He's so negative out of the gate. He's like so critical about it, and he loves it. That's the thing. He's like Star Trek, and I don't even know what he's talking about. He's just going off immediately.
Yeah.
I don't know why LiteratureDevil was so excited when I showed him the big long Trek Actually playlist by Steve Shives. And LiteratureDevil was just automatically excited. Like, oh my god, there's so many videos to cover, so many bad
fantastic. I didn't know he made so many. It was great.
It's how could you possibly be excited about this guy?
Oh, I am. We go a long way back. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm just kidding. But like,
Me and Steve were like photons and
no, it just goes back. It goes back to like the whole feminism and the skeptic thing that I remember watching with great glee when in like 2014 or something like that. And it's like, what are they up to now? You know, and you got Sargon winning that lawsuit, and
Sargon lawsuit. What?
He won a lawsuit against this woman Aquila, obviously, who has to pay him $38,000 or something
For
plus
what?
court costs. She tried to sue him.
For what?
For what do you call it? For copyright breach, because he was using a fair use thing. Yeah, it's really stupid.
Well,
but,
she just fucking lost money out of her pocket.
I was just trying to say, like, briefly, like where we are now. It's funny to see, he's made. All right, we're talking about Star Trek videos that have to do with terrorism. Like, interesting. Are we going to get into the Bajorans? I hope.
The only thing I can think about specifically is the Bajorans, and even then, that's because Deep Space Nine goes over like some darker moral gray areas.
The Maquis also.
You know what else? Sorry, Smo. You know what we could watch that's not a negative video or whatever that might be interesting at some point is Computing Forever's Babylon 5. Is Deep Space Nine a ripoff of Babylon 5? We could talk about
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun to talk about with the chat.
It is interesting, yeah, because even JMS was talking about that when he was pitching it to Paramount.
Is that Dave Cullen?
That's right.
I've seen it before, and
great.
I see Babylon 5, but I know it makes a lot of good points. But the thing is, though, if we're covering someone who just has like a really good, solid take and makes absolutely fucking brilliant arguments, there's no really a reason to watch other than like, yeah, we agree,
don't think so?
yeah. No. I think it'll just be us agreeing a lot of the time. I don't like Computing Forever is fucking fantastic, but whenever we watch like a video on Morning Nonsense that's by I don't know, some guy who just talking, we usually just sit there and listen to them rather than discussing about their points and arguments.
I'm sorry, what is a DSL mouth? Does anyone know?
No. Is that what I think it is?
I would Google it, but I don't think I want to.
I know what ADSL is, but I don't know what DSL.
No. It means something sucking lips.
Oh dear. Well, that's enough for me. Let's keep going.
World, most of the heroes of Star Trek have been status quo warriors. They're Starfleet officers.
Status quo warriors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wait. I remember.
Social status quo warriors.
In my comment section, there was something about apparently so do with Mariner. And apparently Mariner is a character which actively challenges the status quo.
Right.
And that's the reason why we don't like her. And the reason why we like Cisco is because he's a status quo warrior fighting for the status quo.
How is Cisco the status quo warrior?
I know.
He kind of always kind of breaks the mold of what you typically expect from a Starfleet captain. Also, the Steve Shives' face right now is pretty much the same face I had throughout the entire watch of Star Trek Lower Decks.
I was thinking. I was recently watching all the Red Letter Media stuff, and I was rewatching some episodes, and I was trying to think, oh, what's the best captain? Like, obviously,
Cisco.
Well, no, but that's the thing is like, they all exemplify different aspects of humanity and of the Federation, and they're good at different things. No, whatever, I don't care. The question isn't that important. The point is that underneath that is the idea that there is a code that they all work by, but they don't all interpret it the same, and they don't all enact it the same way. So whether they are lowering their morals or just going against the orders or what it is that they're doing and how you justify it is what makes each of them interesting characters. So I don't know. I just
Cisco.
I don't buy into what that statement brings, the status quo thing, because the status quo is set by the people. It's not like there's just some generic like. If the prime directive is the status quo and that's somehow a bad thing, then you're saying the Federation's thing is not valid, and you're saying all of the things that we've been fighting for this whole time are not valid, which is a strange thing to say.
All right. Well, thank you, Dilomaticus. I had no idea what that is, but I'll be happy to check it out. EFAP 100, I didn't know was happening till this weekend, but all right. Cool.
There's an 18-minute meme on the EFAP.meme website that is a collaborative meme of all the people that make the memes usually.
Huh?
And they all got together to do 18 minutes of the Avengers movie and all the different characters in it. LiteratureDevil's in it. You have a part in it. I don't remember which part you are, but you have 2 speaking parts. I'm a Wakandan like general or whatever that guy is, which is all right. And yeah, and then I don't remember what LiteratureDevil is either, but it's pretty damn good. And there's some interesting creative choices. There's some like moments that I felt cringe, but I was like, you know what? This is self-aware cringe, as Jay would say, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's 18 minutes and it's pretty good. I laughed more in those 18 minutes than I did through like the 2 episodes of Lower Decks easily.
That's because
so check that out.
That's because the people who are in the EFEP community have actually good senses of humor.
Yeah, it's actually impressive.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll check it out later. Okay, cool. Let's keep going with Mr. Shives here.
They've got a pretty good thing going, and they fight to defend it against outside threats like the Klingons, the Romulans, the Borg, etc. But there are exceptions to that rule. There are a few Star Trek characters who fight to change that status quo, or who have resorted to violence in defiance of authorities other than the Federation, which they found to be unjust, and who have been portrayed as heroes, or at least not been portrayed explicitly as villains. You might even say some of these heroes, or not villains, are terrorists. But aren't terrorists always supposed to be the bad guys? What does this mean?
Oh my God, it's a story. Oh,
Because
terrorists, it depends on what they're fighting for.
Because they have good guys being terrorists, it means they're glorifying terrorism. No, they never did. They always demonize terrorism, but they have heroes who happen to be former terrorists.
If you are fighting for something righteous and just, then it's kind of becomes more of a moral gray area of fighting for, especially when you've got Bajorans. So like the Bajorans actively fighting for their own freedom, that's something they have to do, because otherwise they're going to be enslaved for forever, essentially. And characters like Kira stopped being terrorists as soon as the occupation stopped, but that was always part of her history.
It was more of like a necessary evil than it was being glorified. And even Kira says that she doesn't look fondly on those days. Like, she did what she had to do to free her people, but she's not like she revels in the glory of the revolution. She feels bad about what she did. It weighs on her, and it's clear when she talks about it. even when other characters bring up what happened during the occupation, that's one thing she doesn't really want to talk about. She would prefer not to talk about her actions during that time period if she doesn't have to.
Because she's not proud of it.
Yeah, so it's not glorifying terrorism. They had some characters who were terrorists and committed terrorist actions, but they don't really glorify it at all. They don't say what an amazing time, what an amazing thing we did. What they do glorify is the heroism, like the bravery it took to actually free these people, to get the Cardassians off the world, but not the actions themselves.
I think when asked how many Cardassians she killed, she said she did what she had to do, and that's the only one of the most kind of visions of how it's viewed. Is something, again, just supporting what you've just said.
All right, well, this is fine. Hey, voice, how's it going, sir?
Hello.
How does the radio burp?
Just like that.
Yeah, like I just did.
There you go. Mark in 3D, the government is doing terrorism through taxes. Okay. You're terrified of taxes?
Taxes are terrifying.
Oh my
Fucking
God.
scary. I would play a horror game that was nothing but taxes.
That's called life, Shiny.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm fucking the game right now.
Yeah. Tax season is going to be soon upon us in another half year. So, yeah.
Great.
Actually, no, it was suspended this year. It was extended to, at the end of summer, actually, for Canada. So
We got until last month, July.
like that, yeah.
We got until July, and they pushed it back. You could postpone it to October, but it doesn't really matter because you still have to pay. Like if you pay in October, you're late, but you get to October to file.
Right. All right. Let's see what he has to say about whether villains and bad guys can be the good guys. Oh my goodness.
Bad guy.
Does Star Trek actually glorify terrorism?
I sure hope so.
The thing is, Star Trek's attitude.
No. What a great
toward
video. Thank you much for that insight, Steve Shives. The answer is no. So thank you very much for everyone for coming out.
Aw, disappointing.
Really.
Well, it's a short video.
I mean, what's his
Prism
reasoning?
is-
Let's hear it.
His reasoning is, I don't know.
Yeah. Let's find out.
is complicated, which is good for me, I guess, because if the question could be fairly handled with a pithy answer, I wouldn't be able to make a video about it. YouTube wouldn't be able to sell advertising on
Is
that
this all
video.
he talks about? Oh, I can make a video now. Now I'm gonna make some money. Ooh, it's like, dude.
Wow, this is such
suck.
great.
Have you met
fourth
Steve
wall breaking.
Shives?
Mhm.
I think his numbers are very funny because at most on his videos he'll get maybe about 17k where he's got a subscriber amount of like 100k.
Can you just stick on topic and just focus? Is that all? Is that too much to ask from these people?
Be self-aware that although YouTube is a terrible place, you're still willing to make money off it, because
Yeah.
then it doesn't make you look so bad for reasons.
Video and split the revenue with me. I wouldn't be able to use the video to solicit monetary donations from my viewers through Patreon and make a decent living thanks to the combined earnings of ad revenue and patron support. I'd be forced to go out and try to find a real job, and let's face it, I'm not cut out for that. I have no marketable skill. This
What?
merciless, increasingly unrated.
Well, he is self-aware.
I have no marketable skills.
He is
I have
self-aware, you
no
know.
skills. I do not want to move.
Is this a
With
joke?
no
He
particular
gets
lack of
2,000. He gets $2,500 a month through Patreon.
That would be nice.
Ugh.
How much do you get?
Oh,
$0?
Not
get
even. Maybe 80 or 90 bucks. Yeah.
yeah, about that much. Yeah.
Holy
Nada.
shit! How does he get this much from a smaller audience that barely watches his videos?
Because
Especially
I think probably because he said capitalism was evil enough.
That's all it took.
Maybe he's drug trafficking or he's smuggling money or money laundering. I don't know.
Like he must have some really fucking. He must have some really good perks for people to pay this amount. Okay, so level $6 is access to Patreon only feed, chance to join Patreon only live stream hangouts.
How much is
Vote
the
for upcoming-
OnlyFans?
How much is it join Steve Shive's OnlyFans? That's what I'm.
Shout out at the end of the episode.
Take my money.
Select upcoming videos. Select new videos for the release, plus all previous rewards. Upon request, I'll produce a personalized video, 1 to minutes in length, starring Steve Shives and stuffy characters of your choice. Choose from Steve, Stuffy, Toe Benson, Jack McPherson, Magnificent,
What?
Hans Krieger, Prospector Jones, William Squirrel Geoff, or what? Personalized video 1 minute long. What the fuck is this on about?
I don't know. I'm losing.
The
I'm
will
losing
to live?
oxygen the more that you talk.
Yeah. Shive watches his wife feature on Ghetto Gaggers. What?
Damn, that is harsh.
Fran,
dare
what
you.
are you? What are
I feel like this is another version of an Eat as a Keys because he barely fucking uploads, but yet he gets lots of money online.
He's on the right side of history.
Well, yeah, at least though, like I suppose what you don't get through Patreon, you still get on like super chats in streams and stuff. Because I'm sure you get a lot of money in the fucking streams.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me, Dunn, Glib, Voice, all just kind of sigh quietly as we're not able to monetize.
No, I'm not like monetizing it because I don't feel like I offer value yet. As soon as I start putting videos out, I'll think about it. But like, I'm just like,
Oh, let's talk about super chat specifically.
no, I know. I'm just saying, like, I feel like the value of the product has to. I'd have to, I want to put that value out there. You'll see once I put my video out there.
I
I
value
want to
myself
justify
at
it.
around £1,000. Chat, just saying. You don't have to give me money, but I'm just saying you should because I'm awesome.
So here's the
Yeah,
thing.
Donate
should
to
support me on
Voice on the
Patreon.
Radio. If you're thinking about if you want more videos on if Star Trek is terroristic, vote Voice on the Radio for President of America
Yes,
on Patreon.
He's British, but
I know nothing
sure?
about terrorism or Star Trek, but
I thought that was the Voice on the Radio filter he puts on, and he's just some guy from Chile or something.
That way you can sound
He's-
woke.
he's secretly
Yeah.
Florida man.
every Florida man to have ever existed.
I am all the Florida man.
And there's the Doctor, the Master, and Florida Man, the 3 Time Lords.
Yeah,
All right, let's try and get through this. I don't know how long we're gonna go, but it's pretty bad.
all the way through.
No, it's
No
pretty.
balls.
Put it
We're
on
gonna-
3 times speed. No.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually do? Oh shit! Let's see this.
It only goes up to 2, but
I'm gonna.
Would eat me alive. I'd be a goner. A goner, I tell you. I'll never make it. Please, don't make me do it. Please, don't make me do it. Why can't I just keep making videos? I ain't hurt nobody. Just let me go. I'll be good.
Is this him,
Jokes on Star Trek.
is him begging for money? Quite
That was
literally?
awesome.
it was more believable when it was sped up, actually.
Yeah, like it's much more funny watching it sped up than it probably would have actually been playing it in real time.
Turn off that pesky ad block.
Please, sir, can I have some money, sir? A few shekels to feed.
This is top superior content. See, he's really earning his $2,000 a month.
Talking
How
about-
you-
I want that $2,000 a month.
You guys are so jealous. Why
Give
can't
me
you
a
just let a
profit.
man live, huh? Why can't you just let him say crazy things on the internet for money?
I want the Ferengi to come along and stick him up with a knife and say, "Give me a profit."
It's the laws of acquisition, Shiny.
Steve Shives makes a 30-minute video and earns £2,000 a month, and yet here he is complaining at the prospect of not getting paid.
Hey, man, get your money. That's what I say. I come from the hood. You know what I mean? Real down low shit.
Yeah,
So-
the hood, as you are born into the fucking film industry. Well done.
Whoa.
I'm so glad your daddy helps you. Some of us actually have to build our way up.
I am.
Well, it's still
I'm not gonna-
California,
I'm not
though,
gonna get
so-
mad about that. Yeah, I'm not gonna
It's-
get mad about going to school at LUSD with MS-13.
I mean, it's still California, so
Yeah,
you know. You are from the hood. The whole state is a
I
hood.
still
man.
I went to public school and grew up in kind of a negative area back in the day. I won't be specific.
All right, let's just keep going, gentlemen.
We need to consider what the term terrorism actually means and what constitutes glorification of it. Defining terrorism might sound easy, but...
See, this is what I actually like.
How
He's
is he-
trying to define his terms.
No,
That's a
but
good thing.
The way he says that he's going to define his terms is still sounding like he's up his own ass.
Well,
like,
yeah, but that's, you know, how he does it is important, but at least he's trying to do it.
A definition that a broad range of people can agree upon has proven difficult. The United Nations has been struggling to come up with a definition of terrorism its members can agree upon for the past several decades and hasn't quite gotten there yet. The closest it's come is this line from the 1994 Declaration on Measures to Eliminate International Terrorism. Quote, criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons or particular persons for political purposes are in any circumstance unjustifiable, whatever the considerations of a political,
All right, slow
philosophical,
down, slow down.
ideological,
Because now we're getting into something. This should be interesting to talk about.
racial, ethnic, religious, or any other nature that might be invoked to justify them. That basic notion that terrorism consists of criminal acts intended to provoke fear in order to make a statement or further an agenda isn't so controversial. Most dictionary definitions of terrorism describe it in similar terms. What is controversial is A, what kind of acts deserve to be labeled as terrorism, and B, whether acts of terrorism are wrong by definition as declared in that United Nations code.
All right, wait a minute.
There's a very complex discussion for what is essentially Star Trek.
I really want that Niners baseball cap from...
Wait, you guys know what the formal definition of terrorism is, right? Which
No.
it's using the violence or the threats of violence or intimidation for political like motivation, like for a political advancement.
Pretty much
I
Antifa.
thought
Yeah,
you couldn't
so
be- you
basically
couldn't
he's
be a
saying,
nation.
is there
you
a
couldn't be
time-
nation commit terrorism?
Say again?
I didn't think you could be a nation and commit terrorism. It was like a small scale group of people following a specific ideology.
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's true, but I just find it funny that
I think that's a common a commonality of the people that kind of cause terrorism in our modern day real world. But I think terrorism can definitely be much bigger than that definition of just being like a religious group like ISIS or whatever.
Allah Akbar.
Well, we're gonna have to cancel Dunn. Dunn's
Yeah.
opinions and terrible jokes do not represent us here on the Smudcast.
Well, he represents me 100%. No matter what he says, everything I co-sign.
While
automatically.
Glib is supporting a horrible Islamophobe, unfortunately, his opinions don't reflect this podcast. Please leave Dunn. Please leave.
Yes. Shiny is anti-Israel, and he's canceled.
No.
Yes.
Everybody's canceled.
Everyone's canceled. Born again vampires over here.
Justifiable in certain circumstances. Star Trek has been having a conversation about these questions with itself and with us in the audience since almost the beginning.
Really?
In the classic...
The show is having a conversation with itself. Interesting. Okay.
Oh.
Are the writers talking to each other and arguing behind the scenes?
I think he's talking about the way they do political allegory. So it presents an idea and then it will go back and forth, just pointing out certain like positives and negatives, and then letting the audience make up for themselves if it is in fact right or wrong. And that's pretty common for a lot of Star Trek. And I think it's safe, like a thing to say it's fine as a discussion, because it is actively creating a discussion by pointing out these positives and negatives. And that's how it should be doing, politics in Star Trek. Not just, hey, this is good and this is bad. Actually have nuance. And
I just don't like the idea of a piece of media or a product on the stage or what have you is talking to itself. It can be
I would
self-referential.
referring it as talking to itself. I think it's possibly just him poorly wording, poor word choice.
Yes, I agree. But it's the fact that he said that, I'm like, did you even think about what you were saying, sir? Well, the actors are talking. Yes, the actors are talking. Yes, it's called dialogue. Thank you.
Trek episode Errand of Mercy, Kirk and Spock engage in what could be described as terrorist activities in an attempt to liberate the Organians from an occupying Klingon
I remember
force.
this.
Stranded,
This is actually a pretty cool episode. Whatever the guys are called, they're like super powerful, but they hide it. So it's pretty much just Spock and Kirk trying to liberate these people who don't need to be saved. And the Klingons are like, we're going to kill you all. And they were like, and no one dies. It's like, yeah, when you have a supreme being who controls all your weapons, yeah, there's no worries.
Starfleet officers on the planet after a Klingon fleet moves in and forces the Enterprise to temporarily retreat. Kirk and Spock blow up a cache of weapons, hoping to rally the Organians to rise up and resist the Klingons. It doesn't work. The Organians are pacifists who are disgusted by violence no matter who's doing it and for what reason. And also, it turns out,
yeah, they're like Q, but just nicer versions of Q.
Yeah.
They're just playing along. They want everyone to get along. That's it. But they're not trying to make you get along. They're just letting Klingons be Klingons and Kirk and Spock be their own person. That's it. They're just trying to get everyone to be nice. But they're not imposing it. They're just going along with whatever they want. Errand of Mercy condemns Federation's imperialism. Really? Huh.
It's not really imperialistic, though. The Federation doesn't seek out people to dominate them. It's only like, hey, do you want to join us?
Do you come join our pretty sweet party over here?
If anything, it's to stop the Klingons' imperialism. If you want to talk about what because they come in, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. It's like, oh, and Kirk and Spock are like, we got to stop them from doing that. So they go and blow up the weapons cache. They do a bunch of other things, but the Federation's pretty nice about everything. They're saying we want to help you. That's why you should sign a treaty with us or let us help you. And they're like, no, we're fine. So they don't know what's going on yet.
I think that the biggest moral issue with the Federation, like when it comes to the Prime Directive and what they stand for, is whether or not it's moral to wait to interact, to make first contact. Maybe it's better to just make first contact
if you can actively, if you can actually stop a problem before it happens. Like, because the whole thing is don't interrupt the evolution. So, okay,
but
so
why
let's say
why is that the standard?
Let's say in theory that we have a civilization on a planet, and they're let's say they're about to be killed by a volcano. This is pretty simple, like stuff that's been done before, and so they can either they have the ability to save these people. But it's then the Prime Directive doesn't allow them to because it could interrupt their evolution. So then it does have the moral question of what's worth more, corrupting their civilization or at least potentially corrupting it, or saving their lives. And then there's also other episodes which kind of go over the ramifications of corrupting someone's culture.
Well, just for the sake of reference, like a culture that is taking longer to get to a certain cycle is going to be taken advantage of by another culture that is advanced already, that isn't a member of the Federation. It's possible.
Well, it might not be that they're taking longer. It might just be that they evolved later. Like, say, they started evolving at a later point.
What I'm saying is that if there's another culture that's going to come in and mine their resources in the area or in an area that could be useful to them, maybe you want to help them. But at the same time, it also comes into question that if you have the ability to enlighten somebody or bring someone information in their lifetime, instead of it taking generations of whatever to get to a certain point, then do you have the moral impetus to provide them? It's the Prometheus story. Is it more moral to enlighten people or to let them figure things out on their own? And that's a question that I don't think that there has been because hold on a second. What I'm saying is that I would love to see some more episodes of Star Trek or a movie about the Federation facing off against a civilization that was interested in doing the opposite of the Prime Directive and trying to enlighten them, and then in that way, and bring them into the Federation, and then maybe that could be some sort of issue because it would have to do with other things that are going on in the quadrant. Like if they come in and you're just avoiding talking to them, are you going to stop the other people by force from bringing them fire, the proverbial fire? Do you forcibly stop Prometheus from coming down or whatever? That's and from the Titans, that kind of thing.
So, Glib, I have a question. What would happen if you gave the Roman Empire nukes?
Well, that's not the whole point. I mean, what I'm saying is that if you brought people down and educated them, if you taught them chemistry, what would happen?
But the thing is, a culture might not be ready for things like that, which is why.
Who are you to judge that? Just because you have the ability to do that? What if there's somebody else that has a counter motive?
Yeah, but then
if
you actively give something which could be abused, which could actively be something which could work against them, something which might even be well intentioned, it could rapidly change. Like even if you give, say, I don't know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, a computer. There are lots of ways which a computer could eventually evolve to, destabilize everything, because a computer could also be used for bad things, as you can, I don't know, fucking to learn how to calculate shit. I don't know right now, but still, at the same point, it's so. I think there is a lot of a very big conversation to have, which Star Trek does go over, of the Prime Directive and its importance, and it even challenges the Prime Directive at times. Whereas
I understand that there has been. I'm just saying I want more of it. And what I'm
Well,
saying is
too bad you're not going to get more of it.
I'm just saying that this is more interesting than trying to figure out if terrorism is a thing that they do, because that goes against the Prime Directive. Really, the Prime Directive is not necessarily to interfere with cultures. There's a diplomatic edge to it. If there was a situation where a Federation planet was under attack from a Klingon planet, then it would be obvious. It wouldn't be terrorism, though. It would be part of a treaty. You understand? It would be formal warfare, because the Federation is all about civilized actions. That's the point. You know what I mean? So it's always funny when people try to dirty the hands of the Federation, and it's not like an admiral that's going crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in the context of Adax's point here, the Federation has no right to kill on Organians' behalf. At that point in the story, I don't think they were trying to kill the Klingons. They were just trying to blow up their weapons.
Yeah.
So, but they were trying to stop them, because they realized if they don't stop them, they would kill these people who are defenseless. And they had no idea their capability. They had no clue what they could do. So they felt they had to, because they respect life. That's the whole point of the Federation, was to preserve life and discover it and help them out. And as soon as, what's his name comes down, I can't remember the Klingon's name, he pretty much just dominates the entire, like, this planet is ours, you're going to do this for us, or we're going to kill you. You're like, okay, fine. But there's no actual showcase of them being victimized by the Klingons. It just sort of assumed that they were. So there's no exposition showing us scenes of them being pushed around. They're all very pacifist. They're like, yep, no problem. They don't get angry. They don't freak out. It's all very weird to everyone. It's like, and that's why they ask. I think Spock's a traitor. They say, okay, you're a Vulcan traitor, and you're his friend. It's like, okay, try to fit in. It doesn't work. They're too emotional, or rather, they're too reactive compared to these guys. The Organians choose to accept Klingon dominance. Yeah, they accept everything. They just sit back, pretty much. There's no leader. There's just a council, and that one guy is just like sort of the speaker of the council. But there's
no muffled for anybody else?
Yes, he is.
Am I muffled?
It sounded like you went on the ground for a second.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll speak a little closer to the microphone.
Blip on the radar, sir.
So I'm actually gonna head out. I don't really have much to add regarding Star Trek. I haven't watched anything of it. So other than
Dunn, you're objectively wrong. Yeah, we need to sit you down in a chair and educate you.
Sorry, I'm working through Hannibal, which is at least like that I can see is much superior.
Oh yeah, well, not superior to Star Trek, but pretty good. We will re-educate you. It's not easy to become sane, Dunn. It's not easy to become sane.
Oh, it's just not my thing.
Not yet. Let's wait till the re-education takes in.
I will watch it if you are, but I will likely be writing while we watch, probably.
No problem, Dunn. Thanks for your time.
Alrighty. See you guys.
All right. Let us keep on going.
They have godlike powers, which they use to force the Federation and the Klingons to stop fighting and agree to a peace treaty. But Captain Kirk, our hero, is so convinced it's the right thing to do that when Aelborn, the leader of the Organians, well, not really, but kind of, refuses to resist the Klingons, Kirk threatens to beat his ass too. Errand of Mercy isn't about terrorism. It's about the folly of war and the absurdity of two powerful nation states, the Federation and the Klingons, standing in for the United States and the Soviet Union.
No.
I mean, if you want to make that comparison, that's on you, but I don't think there's enough there to really say, hey, this is X and Y.
You could do it between any fuckers. You could do it between, I don't know, what's like China and Japan, or North Korea and South Korea. Just so many. Just as long as you have two sides which are against each other, you could make that analogy, because it's not, because it's so generalized and it's taking elements from this, that, and the other. And it's just like Star Wars when it came to the Empire. It's like, sure, you could fit this thing in here. You could fit the Cold War in there. But guess what? You could fit a hell of a lot more things in there as well, not just the Cold War.
Yeah, it's pretty much, we watched the show, it's very straightforward. Because the Organians can do all these amazing things right near the end, everything is sort of taken away. Like there's about to be a fight, and all of a sudden, all their weapons just heat up so hotly that no one can touch anything. Same with the controls on the Enterprise and all the ships. Like all the controls just start not melting, but they just radiate heat, so no one can touch them. So it's just this ridiculous scenario where they're like, should we use our fists? Like, what's going on? Like,
Touch them.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like, okay, so they're about to have a fight scene. They're about to do this and that, and the Organians just walk in and say, "Stop it." So it's kind of like having two kids fight over a toy, and the parents walk in and take the toy away. It's like, all right, stop it. Like, oh, okay.
Dealing with each other peacefully. Nevertheless, it does depict terrorism, and the terrorists are the lead protagonists of the series.
Why are they
and
terrorists?
Why would they be terrorists in this? That's you make
They
the comparison
blow
that
up
it's
some
like America
weapons.
versus this. But it's
What
like you
happens
saying
is
you made the
Kirk gets there
comparison of
first.
Soviet Union. No. But he said this is the Soviet Union versus America, and then he's accused one side of being terrorists. So who was the terrorists in the Cold War?
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is like they just occupied the planet or whatever area like that day. And they're like, we can't contact our ship or else they'll find us. So we got to do something while we're here. And that was to blow up the cache.
There's a difference between waging war with another country and labeling them as terrorists. So England went to war with Germany or went to war with France. So who was the terrorists in that? The French or the English, or the Germans or the English? It's not that simple. Two people who have a conflict and there is a war about it does not mean that one side is good and one side is terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard take on this show, just because the nature of the politics is so like, as a matter of fact, now they're in power. Like, wait a second. So does that mean the Federation's at war, or are they just sort of teasing the Klingons?
Each side will commit things that are against the code of conduct when it comes to war. So executing prisoners of war or something, or concentration
Fighting
camps
without a
and stuff
uniform.
like that. Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
essentially
is that
war.
terrorism now? Because, yeah.
It is essentially war because they've taken over a peaceful planet which was neutral or what have you, and they're trying to get out of there. And in the process, trying to help these guys that got taken over, but they don't seem to care. So Kirk's like, well, someone better start caring. It may as well be us, because he's that kind of guy. That's it. There's no like political desire aside from freeing these people.
Is it what was the threat again? What were the Klingons going to do? They were just going to enslave them or something?
They were gonna start killing them at that evening.
Right?
Yeah.
So like genocide, basically.
Something like that. They would just start executing people.
So anyway, we started blasting.
So the Klingons are the terrorists?
They were the occupiers.
Well, that's the weird thing, right? So if they go in there and swarm it like ISIS, then it makes sense that they're the terrorists. but
They're
maybe
really
sorry, I was gonna say maybe Spock and Kirk are the terrorists because they're fighting back against an oppressive regime. Did you see how this, like, it could just be, he's saying like it could just be whatever you want it to be. But I think that the designation of terrorism is usually that it's against a government by a non-governmental force. As soon as the force starts to become governmental, then it's no longer like terrorism.
It's war.
It's formal war. But maybe that's an arbitrary designation. I don't know how
guess,
other people
like,
feel about that.
When it becomes like a state versus a state, it's a lot more.
Well, that's what this is.
That's what that's why it doesn't apply in my book. But I understand how somebody could just try and muddy the water and be like, no, terrorism is, interchangeable. Terrorism is just something that's
subjective.
I think that the overall take here is that terrorism is going to be used by governments because it's like a propaganda word to invalidate someone.
Well, I don't think the terrorists, if they're part of a group, like a country, would be acting they'd be acting for that country.
That would be state-sponsored terrorism, right?
I guess. I mean, but these are actual Klingon warriors, and these are actual Federation officers, and they're having a skirmish because the Klingons are going to kill people, and Kirk doesn't like that. That's basically what it is.
It's like people say, you have something like Al-Qaeda, and they're terrorists, right? Are they trying to establish a state? Are they trying to establish a form of political leadership?
They have a goal.
Yes, they have a goal. They have all this different stuff. But the question that I wonder is, like, what is the difference between that and the invasion of another nation? Like if Pakistan invaded somewhere, or versus somebody that had the same kind of like idea, same ideology.
Yeah, that would be countries against each other. That's war. That's fine. Those are acts of war. Acts of terrorism to me means an organization, not necessarily affiliated with an actual political party, or their own group,
or
that
state.
Can't wage war. They don't have the numbers or the power, are doing violent acts for a goal, whatever that goal might be.
And see, then there's the partisan designation that you could give yourself, like, oh, we're the resistance. There's so many different ways to couch it. And
sure, yeah, rebels, yeah.
I think that subjectivity is basically what he's like trying to say. But the thing is that the Federation are trying to stop people from getting killed. And I don't think that could be classified as terrorism necessarily. Because if you define terrorism as fighting that people that are trying to kill you, then that's so, that's like, if I try and fight off a tiger, is that terrorism against the tiger? What point? Oh, if there's like a group of people in my community that are after me, if I fight back, is that terrorism? Is gang violence terrorism?
If you go off and bomb a weapons depot in a war, is that an act of terrorism?
Yeah, sabotage, terrorism. Like I think it's a very specific like type of thing where you're politically motivated or you're motivated to affect politics through violence and intimidation.
Well, here's the thing: if let's say I came around to your house and I smashed your computer without you knowing, you could say that was terrorism, and then likewise you can come around to mine and break my windows, and I can say that's terrorism. Neither of us are wrong. When that happens, if that happens, because it is terrorism by our perspective. We have had something of ours broken to support someone else's ideology that we don't agree with.
Well, if I was trying to intimidate you and break your computer so that you wouldn't vote, or you would think a different way, like for the sake of some sort of political action. If I was trying to stop you from signing people up to your party by going from door to door. So I went to your house and I said, hey, if you keep doing that, me and my friends are going to come and get you. That kind of thing. That's like a clear-cut definition of terrorism. What I don't find terror is like necessarily terroristic if an occupying force has taken over your country and you are at a point in warfare where you cannot formally fight back, but you're engaged in resistance, like behavior against an occupied thing. I don't think that's terrorism. I think it's more terrorism when it's your own government. You know what I mean? It would have to be, if it's a foreign occupying force, I don't think it's terrorism. It just seems to be war by
I mean, it can be a terroristic act. It's a terroristic act if you were to commit sabotage for your side.
Okay.
in order to support an ideology. But if you get labeled as a terrorist because of that, well, that's down to the person that's been subjected to whatever you've done.
All right, here's a super chat from me, Dax. Kirk does get Organians killed. I don't think he does. I don't think any of them die. I'm quite sure they don't. He wanted the people of Organia to rise up and revolt. Yes, he did. At no point does Kirk ever listen. Well, he does to a point, because they're not doing anything. And he's like, listen, you guys are going to die. And he's like, well, just don't worry about it. They don't tell him anything.
Yeah, if they had told him, he probably would have been like, oh, okay, never mind.
But they do not get killed. No one gets killed. That's the thing. They purposely make sure no one gets hurt. They hate violence. So they're very clear about that. What's his name? He's about to order the execution of I don't know how many people. And it's like, oh, we got to do something. And then they're about to confront them at his little stronghold that they made. And as soon as he's about to attack, it's like all the weapons heat up. So, no, I don't think I'm quite sure. I don't remember watching it, but that was a while back. I don't think anyone dies. I don't think a Q-like character would allow any of their people to die. So,
it's kind of a counter thing to them being pacifists, because they basically just have the most powerful weapons. They don't have anything to worry about because they're invincible, not because they're
pretty much. Yeah, they are invincible. Yeah, it's kind of the point.
Do any of you follow William Shatner on Twitter?
No.
I do, and all the time he's just having Twitter arguments with social justice warriors, like almost all the time, every day.
That's awesome.
Like he's just constantly having arguments with them.
Sounds like a great way to spend my day.
Like at the moment he's arguing against someone who's calling him privileged and cis, and he points out that he's Jewish and he got bullied for being Jewish, and he had family who died in World War II in concentration camps.
Yeah, they'll just come for him anyway. They'll figure out something.
All right, let's keep going.
Overall message of the episode is that nonviolence is preferable to violence, and that it's sad whenever violence becomes the solution to a problem. The willingness of Kirk and Spock to blow some shit up and maybe even kill a few Klingons if the situation calls for it isn't entirely condemned.
If
the Organians don't like it, but Kirk
could possibly kill some Klingons. They weren't going to kill some Klingons. That wasn't the active goal. In fact, I think if they would actively try to avoid it or killing where possible.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with them defending people that are going to be killed. That doesn't make any sense.
But even then, they're not actively out to murder people.
No, they're not, obviously. I mean, but the Klingons are Klingons.
Never changes his mind. His final words to Kor, the Klingon commander, aren't sorry for blowing up your stuff and trying to kill you. I see now that violence should never be the answer.
That's not the message of oh my God, dude.
Violence is sometimes the answer. Sorry.
Kirk's trying to save these guys. All of a sudden they step in saying, we don't need saving. We're gods.
Violence was the answer to fucking World War II. And
no, it wasn't. Nope.
Not allowed.
Save what you love.
No, we should just let Hitler just roll over the whole of Europe. Just keep expanding to Russia, and then you
got to save what you love.
Save it.
His final words to Kor are, well, I guess the Organians aren't going to let us fight. Later on the Enterprise, he admits to Spock that he's embarrassed, since he now realizes he was angry at the Organians because they wanted to prevent a war he didn't even want in the first place. But he never demonstrates any regret for their acts of terrorism on the planet.
He tried to save them. They didn't need saving.
Acts of terrorism.
What? This is such a simple show. It's not that complicated. When you have a Deus Ex Machina pop out of the end going, hey guys, chill. I'm God. Shut the hell up. Go over there in the corner. You go in the other corner, and go away. That's the show.
Dunn's hat.
It's literally a bunch of kids looking at gods, going, "Oh, we're sorry. We didn't mean to start a fight." And
yeah,
then they go,
pretty much.
Kirk did nothing wrong.
Sorry, I broke your toys.
Kirk only did things wrong because the beings down there were basically not telling him what the truth was. They were just laughing at him. They're like, let's see what this guy does.
Yeah, they were pretty much just being secretive while the Klingons were taking everything over. They were saying that they're going to kill a bunch of them tonight. So Kirk acts. He's like, oh, we got to go stop them. He's about to stop them. Nothing happens. The weapon heats up. He's,
Look at these stupid humans. What are they trying to do? Save us?
Yeah, it's like
That's what the Q is. The tongue-in-cheek version of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Which, again, not what the episode was about, but still, I don't think it's unreasonable to infer that at the end of that episode, Kirk still regards his blowing up the weapons cache on Organia as a justifiable act.
he was, yes, exactly. He was trying to save them. They were threatened with death. If he didn't do anything, they would have died. In his mind, at least. That's basically that's
It's taking away their their weaponry, so they can't fight and kill more people. If blowing up the weapons, wherever the weapons factory is, involves killing a couple workers, by proxy, that's better than them starting a war and slaughtering hundreds. You can't start a war if you don't have weapons.
And not just Kirk, Spock is right there with him.
That's his officer. Of course, he's going to follow Kirk. What, Captain? I don't think I'm going to do this.
Follow officers and all orders.
Spock, I order you to help me blow up the weapons dump, and he does it. That's like what? They're part of a military. What do you want? Military people blow stuff up. Wow, what a great idea. Never heard of that.
Every step of the way. In fact, Spock is the one who first suggests a more direct approach for dealing with the Klingons, and he tosses the grenade that triggers the explosion. Spock is a terrorist.
No.
The presence of terrorism.
This guy's the smuggest, dumbest guy. Oh my God. It's a show for this is not a hard show to watch.
Whenever, the dam busters went and created the bouncing bomb to go blow up the dam or wherever, I don't remember, but it was in World War II. They were terrorists. You guys know the dam busters, I assume.
Dam busters.
There was a film about it. I don't remember what the dam was called, but they devised.
Well, I don't give a damn.
They created the bomb that was designed to be able to skip across water, so it's called the bouncing bomb, and that way they could blow up this big dam that was some kind of stronghold. But I guess that would have been an act of terrorism, despite the fact, it was to try and end a war.
Well, I wonder if the Germans were thinking, damn it. I can keep going all day. I've got like 20 of these.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Damn it. Shiny will just keep going.
In Errand of Mercy is incidental. Eventually, Star Trek would deal with the issue more directly. Over the years, various Star Trek shows and films have devoted many hours to the subject, and their attitudes toward terrorism and terrorists haven't always been sympathetic. Terrorists are unambiguously the villains in the Enterprise episodes Demons and Terra Prime.
Do you know why?
Two-part story.
Because they are fucking xenophobic. They are actively threatening the world. Hey, world, if you don't get rid of the aliens, we're going to fucking shoot a laser beam, killing aliens.
The laser beam.
Fuck. Like,
initiate order laser.
It's nothing to do with the actual terrorism itself, and it's got to do with the motivation behind the terrorism. Because if you're actively trying to get, let's say, in the best thing we can really compare it to is something like Deep Space Nine, because that has the Bajorans fighting for their freedom, and you have the Maquis, which aren't fighting for their freedom. But
see, the number one thing is that these are different races that are trying to oppress the other race completely. So I don't really justify fighting back to have sovereignty over your situation as terrorism. I think it's that sometimes terrorists use that as an excuse.
I would call it resistance, but you could still also define it as terrorism, but it's still justified in fighting back against the Cardassian government, which is actively oppressing your people. No, because it's not war, because the Bajorans didn't have a government. It was dismantled by the Cardassians.
I understand that, but usually when there's when a culture has been defeated, necessarily sometimes there's a government in exile, that kind of thing. So there's usually some sort of organization.
The Bajorans called themselves.
Now, is the organization of the Bajoran resistance a terrorist group, Or is it is it the last of the Bajoran government? That's
it's
the
not
question.
the last of the Bajoran government because
okay, but why not?
Because they
why
have
is the leader of the resistance not the de facto government leader?
Because they create a provisional government that is not the resistance. It's put in place. I
understand that.
After. So the thing is,
but that's not the official government. The official representative of the Bajorans.
The Bajorans called themselves. The Bajorans called themselves resistance fighters, but then Cardassians called them terrorists. Right. And it's down to more the perspective.
But the Cardassians were the ones that were invading as a foreign occupying force that were not the same race. They were not the legitimate government, and that's the reason.
But the actions they were doing, the actions they were doing were still trying to invoke terror in Cardassians. So a lot of things they were doing were quite fucked up, and quite dark. Actively killing innocent people. There was a story about a Cardassian whose family died in a Bajoran terrorist attack, and that it's because Deep Space Nine is a show which actively shows it shows lots of moral gray areas, and it's never just something being right or wrong. There's lots of different shades of gray in the middle of these two, and while one side might believe that they're pure right, the things they do are kind of a bit, well, that's a bit too far, or not too far, but it's like, oh, that's actually pretty dark.
I don't think that makes it a terrorist thing, because the entire thing is that they are.
If you're actively trying to cause terror, if you're actively bombing public places, if you're acting in government buildings,
it's equal. It's just that one group is fighting. It's what the issue is formalization.
We're arguing over semantics here.
It's not. This is important. Terrorist
it's pretty much what we just call it.
What?
We're pretty much arguing just over what to call it, really.
That's what he's doing, though. He's using the rhetoric to justify that Star Trek is going to justify terrorism, and I don't know why you're missing that. I'm saying that I disagree with that.
Even the creators of Deep Space Nine admit that the Bajoran resistance were pretty much a terrorist group, and they even in some of the episodes.
I don't think that it's terrorism. I'm sorry. You can say it's semantic, but I don't think that it's terrorism. They're attacking civilians on a different planet, you're saying, and that's terrorism? But their planet is the one that has been under
not on Cardassian planet, that they're on their own planet still.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So then it's not really I don't think that you can justify it by saying they're civilians. I wouldn't consider them civilians. They're an occupying force.
Well, no, because there are Cardassian civilians who are just family.
Why?
They don't have anything to do. Well, because they don't necessarily have anything to do with the So let's say you, your parents. Okay, so your dad is a big military guy. He's occupying. He's part of the occupation, and you've grown up on Bajor, and you're a Cardassian, and you're just living there. You've grown up there. You've happily married now,
I get what you're saying,
and then that you're still a civilian.
I don't consider terrorism. I'm just telling you, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider terrorism if your entire culture is basically being under control by a foreign alien species and you're killing their civilians.
That's not terrorism.
I don't consider it to be terrorism. No, because if they are going to label themselves,
I think you're arguing
hold on
more.
A second. If they're going to label themselves the provincial government and they are going to say that they have authority over you, then I don't see how it's justified.
Because it's not until after. It's not until after they have the provisional government. And before that, it's a bunch of random resistance groups. I think you're confusing the idea of terrorism. You've connected it too much with the connotation of being a negative term.
No,
I think it's more. It can be used in both.
So the idea that civilians are actually can occupy your territory, they're not legitimate targets to you if they're on your land.
Well, no, because they haven't done anything wrong.
That's not part of. They're not part of the supplying logistic force. They're not part of the organized group that's on your territory.
Well, one of them was in the story. It's actually an office clerk. He's just
let me just put it this way. Let me counter what you're saying. You're in the exact same example you're saying. Some office clerk is now coming from the Cardassian Empire, right? And they're landing on this planet. As soon as they set foot on the planet, I consider that to be illegal occupation, right? They're an elite.
If you came onto my my village, if you came into the village and with your family, and I blew up your house and killed your parents, that's not an act of terrorism.
If who's in control of this village?
Me.
No, that's not the same situation. If my government has violently and illegally taken over your culture entirely,
Yeah, but the government and individuals
and
are two
enslaved your
separate
people,
things.
I don't consider it to be terrorism if you start to take out their whatever their targets are.
Civilians?
I didn't say that, Todd. No, I didn't say that there's no bad targets at war. I just think it's part of war. I wouldn't call it terrorism, because I think the idea of occupying somebody else's territory for the sake of control is also terrorism.
But
so
these are
if
people
you
who
want
are
to
just living
neutralize the
there.
term,
There are people who are just living there. They're the families, they're the wives, the kids, the people, or the
right? But they're living there based on the fact that there are people that have been killed and
what
displaced.
if they're born there?
What
if they're born there? There were Cardassians which were born on Bajor.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying, is that they're there as part of a genocidal replacement program, or as part of an integration program that goes against the sovereignty of the nation.
Yeah, but they don't fucking know that.
They're an illegitimate provisional government
That's
force,
not
just
their
like Vichy
fault.
France.
That's not their fault they're there.
Yes, it is.
It's their fault they were born on Cardassia?
Let's keep going on with the video.
No, it's not. It's the fault of the people that are supporting the war. They are supporting an ongoing war, because if people are saying, no, we don't want to be ruled by you.
What you are, you need to be careful.
They're not ruling.
What you are essentially saying is that it's okay to kill immigrants if they're there because it's not.
What do you mean, immigrants?
Okay, guys, we're gonna stop right now because we got to get back to the video, and I'm glad you're having a great discussion about possible definitions of what terrorism is.
I'm sorry. It's just like the I have to clear it because the chat is saying a bunch of stupid shit. It's like the insane cowboy is the type who justified terror bombing because citizens pay taxes to his enemy. So let me just explain that. The idea is if that you want to say that you are accepting a provisional government as an occupying force and civilians, that they are civilians, that's a categorical thing. So at the same time, you could say, oh, I'm a terrorist, or you could say the occupying force is a terrorist. If we want to be semantically subjective, that's fine. You can totally go and say that. But there is an absolute argument for the idea that somebody that is quoting and claiming to be a civilian, that is part of the occupying force, is part of the military unit that is occupying. It's a military government that is occupying you as basically a junta or whatever.
There's the government, then there's the military, then there's the civilians.
Can be justified on both sides. I personally don't like the term terrorism being used at all. So I can understand why someone like Steve Shives would say, "Oh yeah, Star Trek," because then what it does is it says that the violent crimes that we're saying on both sides are acceptable, right? Now none of this situation is acceptable in the first place. The Cardassians should not have invaded, right? That's the first move that's wrong, right? There should be no Cardassian.
Yeah. No one's defending the Cardassian government, but then the civilian, you're not responsible.
Hold on a second. I'm saying it at that point. It's terrorism is out the window. Now it's a war for the very existence of the Bajoran sovereignty, right? So it's terror. At what point does it become terrorism and stop being formal war? When the actual formal army is defeated? I'll accept that if you want to say that.
Well, there's no longer a government. There's no longer an army. The entire Bajoran government has been dissolved, and now it's a small resistance groups.
I understand the disposition, but wait, listen to exactly specifically what I'm saying diplomatically. You are accepting hold on a second. You're accepting the legitimacy of the provisional government from the Cardassian side. What you're basically saying is you're accepting the surrender of the formal Bajoran government as dissolved.
No.
Whereas the perspective of the Bajorans would be that's not the case. That is just more of the military of the Cardassian Empire. Which would be true from the Cardassian perspective.
I'm no way defending the fucking Cardassians at this point, but I just think it's while I think the Bajorans are justified in fighting for their freedom, I still think the acts they were doing in actively trying to cause terror in order to push their own political agenda, and that's not it's a moral gray area thing. It's not a horrible thing. It's not like 9/11. And again, the civilians. I'm on the belief that civilians are a very moral gray area in killing because it's not.
By the way, I'm not saying that you should target civilians.
It's Bajorans.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but civilians and even Bajoran civilians were still killed in these
its
I think you need
acts.
to ask is how much killing civilians contributes to actually any effect on the war, as opposed to it being an act of terror to intimidate the other side and get them to surrender.
I think Rune Wesley made it a good point. It's like it sounds like Glib is trying to make the point of occupying civilians are not civilians and therefore a fair game.
From the perspective of a force that considers that any Cardassian effort that's backing the military is part of their military machine. If you accept the idea of a diplomatic government existing, which you don't have to if you're the Bajorans, because you're basically, what is the threat to Bajor? A genocide of the people at maximum, and at minimum enslavement. So their thing is a fight of survival. So what we're talking about, you're like, correct, it's a gray moral justification. But there's a difference between insurgency, terrorism, and formal declared war. And what I'm trying to point out here is that there has to be a line, and most people are speaking from the state-based mentality. As soon as a state is established, it has a level of legitimacy. This is something that is ongoing in modern-day politics all the time. Who has the legitimate government in Syria? Is it the Syrian government in exile? Is it the Turkish-backed FSA? Was it ISIL? Was it is it al-Assad? It's something that is ongoing, because they could shoot terrorist declarations at anybody that they want to. What we have in the United States is that the terrorist designation is something that applies to the way that our government operates. So whatever government that is in power will be able to declare who is a terrorist and who isn't.
Yeah.
If it's collateral damage, you know what I mean? If there's collateral damage when you're killing civilians in a bombing, then was the atomic bomb an act of terrorism? That's the moral question. So I don't want people to just come at me and say I'm trying to justify terrorism.
You initially described it as if going after civilians directly wasn't an act of terrorism.
But see, that's the thing, is that if you have civilians that are part of the occupying force, then somebody could categorize them as part of the occupying force, that it's a singular entity, that it's a military entity. But that would be disagreeable to a lot of people, because they are thinking, again, from the state sense and from the diplomacy sense that we have, that civilians are not part of the military. You know what I'm saying? But that's part of what the terrorism paradigm has become. That's why the Taliban was so successful, because they were sort of interchangeable. They could mask themselves as civilians, and sometimes civilians would assist the Taliban at will. They didn't have to be formal declared members. So it's much more fluid than people think it is.
So this,
I have to read some super chats right now, guys. Then we're gonna go back to the video. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, Smut. I'm that's the whole scheme of things. I don't want to be hamstrung or characterized. Oh, Glib is out there saying you should go and bomb civilians. No,
I don't think anyone's saying that. No.
Okay, I hope so.
I think people are more confused, like just as I was, where you said it's fair to kill civilians. A fair game.
So I didn't say civilians are fair game, but I could say that if somebody was in a situation where their entire culture, their race, and their existence was going to be wiped out, then they would be able to justify that people that were civilians, quote unquote, that were contractors, that were constructing the enemy's material, would be just part of the war machine. That it would be something that would be under the label of diplomatic.
What if they just file papers? Like, what if they just, what if they're a janitor? They're just actively cleaning.
Well, I understand.
He's the janitor. He's just.
Look, I think it's unethical. But you got to understand, my ethics. And it started with the Cardassians should never have invaded Bajor. That's where my ethics. So I'm already like, holy shit, you know what I mean? But if somebody is doing janitorial services or whatever, and they're cleaning up the base, they're supporting an occupation. Now, I'm not saying that you should kill them. I'm not saying you should kill them, but I know that an intelligence agency would think about exploiting that, or a terrorist agent. Oh, we got to get the keys off that guy so that we can go in there.
Supporting a state infrastructure is not keeping a war machine going.
What actually talk about in their acts?
That war crimes go, but that's again the state's perspective, is that they have the ability to ascribe war crimes to one side and not to the other side because they win.
The specific thing
the provisional government or whatever the government is.
It's not provisional government yet. It's the Bajoran resistance, and then it becomes the provisional government. Well, at least then it becomes the proper Bajoran government. But at least at the beginning, it's the provisional government, because the provisional government was made up of I believe certain parts of resistance cells. But anyway, we're talking specifically about Bajorans, as I brought that up as an example. And the whole reason we talked about this conversation was because trying to say, are the Bajorans terrorists when they're actively causing acts of terror? There were a lot of civilians, both Bajoran and Cardassian, which were actively killed in them trying to spread fear among the Cardassians to push them off the planet.
And I was saying that I wouldn't categorize it as terrorism from the Bajoran perspective because I would consider everything.
Well, yeah, from Bajoran's perspective, they consider themselves resistance.
From my moral and ethical perspective, I'm not saying that it's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm just saying that there's a
we all get that murder is bad guys. I think we got
that's
that.
the most
all right,
obvious.
Let's keep going. Okay. Bogue, thank you, sir. Kira killed both Bajoran and Cardassian civilians during the occupation with their attacks. That's literally terrorism. It depends on who gave the orders, whether she was acting on her own or a little cell. That would be terrorism, yes. Rin Wesley. So if Native Americans start bombing civilian targets in the U.S., that's not terrorism. That would be terrorism. They aren't their own nation. They would be Americans.
Part of the warfare that happened.
Yeah, they are still Americans. So they're
and
acting...
by the way, it was a horrible thing also when the Mexicans did that during the Mexican-American border wars, because that actually incited more defense to the American side. So it's a bad tactic to go after civilians. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't help your cause.
All right. I think we've caught up. Thank you. Let's keep going with the video. I completely forgot where we were. Let me just rewind a bit. There we go.
Or directly. Over the years, various Star Trek shows and films have devoted many hours to the subject, and their attitudes toward terrorism and terrorists haven't always been sympathetic. Terrorists are unambiguously the villains in the Enterprise episodes Demons and Terra Prime, the two-part story arc which many fans consider the rightful series finale, since those were the last episodes before the misbegotten These Are the Voyages. In Star Trek Into Darkness, Khan, using the false identity John Harrison, orchestrates a terrorist attack against Starfleet as part of a plan to rescue his crew from the custody of corrupt Admiral Marcus and revive them from suspended animation. While Marcus is arguably the true villain of the film, Khan ain't exactly a hero. Star Trek Discovery introduces us to the Logic Extremists, a faction of Vulcans that bombed a school and later attempted to murder Sarek. We are not encouraged to take a complex, non-judgmental view of their actions or motivations. So clearly, one answer to the question, does Star Trek actually glorify terrorism, is not always. Sometimes the terrorists are clearly the bad guys, and that's that. We're not supposed to sympathize with them. We're not
the reasons behind what they're doing. Again, if there's a big difference between xenophobic attitudes on Earth and Bajorans fighting for their own fucking freedom.
It's the same framing with any character, whether you know or why you understand why they're doing what they're doing. So you could say that for a group, but as soon as you go into the military level or the galactic, I guess you want to say, this group of people or that group of people that are their own race, their own species, their own military force, then it's political, then it's war. So
it also, the definition applies to unlawful use. So obviously, doing it's terrorism from the Bajorans or whatever against the Cardassians because it's unlawful. And then if there's an international law that is setting the war crime standard, then terrorism would be formally declared by whatever the international groups had agreed upon. So it makes sense that, it'd be terrorism for one group of people. If the Klingons feel like you're doing terrorism against them and you don't, and the laws contradict, then it's going to be different definitions for different cultures. But that's the formal declaration would be, you're committing terrorism. It's unlawful acts of violence and intimidation, which is funny because what would a lawful use of violence and intimidation be, especially against civilians? Wouldn't that be war?
A declaration, and then they'd be formally attacking each other at their discretion. So,
yeah.
Supposed to think, yeah, but they've kind of got a point. We're supposed to cheer when they get their faces punched in, and I do. Nothing better than a well-deserved face punching in. But what about the time Star Trek has taken a more nuanced view of terrorism? As an example, I offer the third season Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The High Ground. The Enterprise is making a stop at Rutia 4 to drop off medical supplies, which they need because terrorism, A group of separatists are demanding independence for their homeland. Well, I don't see why they have to resort to violence. Can't the two sides utilize the diplomatic process to negotiate an agreement to their mutual benefit without the need for an armed conflict? After all, that is the American.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, there's a terrorist attack at a plaza where the away team's at, and while Dr. Crusher's trying to help one of the people wounded in the explosion, one of the terrorists apparates in and abducts her. Later on the Enterprise, Picard is talking over the situation with the senior staff, and Riker is like, why would these dipshit terrorists grab a Starfleet officer? We aren't involved in their thing, the thing they're doing, the terrorism for. And Worf's like, I think they specifically targeted Dr. Crusher. Maybe they need a doctor. And Riker's like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Shut up, Worf. Cut to Beverly with the leader of the terrorists, and she's like, why'd you abduct me? And he says, we need a doctor. The terrorist group is called the Ansata, and their leader, this guy, is called Finn. The Ansata have this new device called an inverter that allows them to apparate from place to place, but unlike a transporter, it enables them to pop in and out without getting traced back to their secret headquarters. The only thing is, repeated use of the device warps their DNA and eventually kills them. That's why they need a doctor. But Beverly examines some of the Ansata suffering from the effects of the inverter, and she's like, dude, I can't do anything for them. The damage is irreversible. And by the way, you're showing early signs of it too. You should just stop using the inverter. And Finn's like, nope. Meanwhile, Riker has been working with Alexana, the Rutian chief of police, to try and find Beverly. Alexana's strategy is to arrest everybody in sight and interrogate them for information that could lead them to the Ansata's hideout. Riker's like, isn't that a little extreme? And Alexana says, maybe, but the last few people who were police chief before me were even worse, so get off my back. Also, the Ansata are animals who blow up school buses, so to hell with them and anyone who helps them. Riker's not really feeling Alexana's whole vibe, plus he's more worried about getting Beverly back safely than about resolving the larger conflict between the Rutians and the Ansata. So when they bring in this guy they arrested on suspicion of being a member of the Ansata, Riker cuts to the chase and says, look, dude, if you're one of the terrorists, just go tell your boss that Starfleet wants Dr. Crusher back and we're willing to bargain for her release, okay? And the guy goes back to the secret terrorist base and tells Finn that he just got arrested and that Starfleet is willing to negotiate for Beverly's release. And Finn says, they're arresting everybody, huh? And Starfleet is working with the Rutians? We'll see about that. I'm gonna blow up that fancy starship. That'll get somebody's attention. Beverly pleads with Finn not to destroy the Enterprise. My son is on that ship, she says. And Finn says, I had a son too. He died in detention when he was 13. Some of Finn's people use the inverter to board the Enterprise and plant a bomb. Geordi is able to tag it with his communicator and beam it into space before it explodes, but the Ansata appear on the bridge and manage to abduct Captain Picard. Picard meets with Beverly at the secret base, and he's like, these Ansata, right? Bunch of jerks. And Beverly says, well, yeah, but they've kind of got a point. And Picard's like, what? Beverly explains, yes, what they've done is bad. She can't condone harming or killing people, but their grievances are legitimate, particularly when it comes to the Federation's involvement, bringing medical supplies to the Rutia, working with them as they conducted mass arrests. Picard counters with, they almost killed Wesley. Beverly's like, would that have been so bad? Okay, she doesn't really say that. She just thinks it. You can tell. You see the look in her eyes? What an actress. Anyway, Finn walks in and Picard's like, oh man, you done messed up this time. The Federation's involved now, bucko. And Finn says, good, that's what I wanted. The Federation's already been taking sides in our conflict by aiding the Rutia. I just want to force you to admit your involvement and use your influence to help my people. Picard says, why should we help you? You plant bombs. You kill innocent people. And Finn says, I've been fighting the only way I can. You want the fighting to stop? You want to get us to the negotiating table instead? Fine. then the Federation has to sit down at the table too and force the Rudians to give us what we want. But before any of that can happen, the gang on the Enterprise figures out how to trace the Ansata when they use their inverter, and they and the Rutians raid the secret base and rescue Crusher and Picard. During the fighting, Alexana shoots Finn in the back and kills him. Riker chastises her for killing him, and she says if we took him alive, he'd become a focal point for more violence as his followers tried to free him. This way, he's a martyr, which...
Is he just narrating the entire episode?
Yeah, he is.
Where's the point? I'm waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah. Like, I get it. This is a terrorist episode. Okay, and...
Yeah, there's a lot of terrorist episodes. I don't think that Star Trek ever justifies the terrorists. The whole point of the ethical layout is that war is fucking
like Star Trek is always portraying his death as wrong. Like always, any death is wrong. But sometimes you have to fight for freedom, and sometimes you do have to do things which are wrong in order to get a right outcome.
Yeah.
And I just think that we're looking at such a subjective term by going, hey, whose law makes it unlawful? Well, ours or yours? Whoever's going to be able to decide.
It's the least shitty option available. Then there's a brief standoff as a boy who belongs to the Ansata points a gun at Alexana, and one of the Rutians points a gun at the boy. Beverly says, "No more killing," and the boy lowers his gun and is taken into custody without further violence. Riker wonders if maybe that boy, who could have killed Alexana but chose not to, represents the beginning of the end of their terrible conflict. Alexana's like, yeah, I bet that's how it'll go. And they all lived happily ever after. Or not, who cares? We never see this planet again. But the episode is extremely important when it comes to Star Trek's attitude toward terrorism because it is representative of how the subject is treated by the franchise as a whole from this point
I really want the Deep Space Nine baseball hat. It's from one of the Deep Space Nine episodes. It's a really clever design. I love it. I kind of want it. You can see it on his head.
I like that the overall thing that Starfleet is like, hey, terrorism is bad, war is bad, killing people is bad, which is what the obvious moral and ethical statement that humankind should be putting out to the universe. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the point.
This was also not a complicated episode, and Steve Shives just sort of went into detail describing all the beats, and you're like, okay, and yeah, you're right, Steve. That's what happened. You're right. Thank you. That's fantastic. You could have just summarized the end of the episode for us, but he went through the whole thing for some reason.
The episode makes it clear that the Ansata are murderers. Alexana tells Riker that they were recently responsible for bombing a school bus and killing 60 children. They claimed it was a mistake and they had intended to blow up a bus full of cops, which... Anyway, the episode also shows us...
he was doing a joke.
See?
He's like, well, killing a bus full of cops, that would have been fine.
It'd be fine. Cause, that's my fucking problem. It's like, who's justified in killing? In my book, nobody. But if somebody is doing this perspective, then they're going to justify it this way. Because everybody's going to die on my family. They're going to take over the whole planet. Well, I got to do something. Oh, these police people are killing all these black people. I got to do something. It's the justification.
Yeah.
It's scary because it's like, oh yeah, we can go do this because it's a underlying that is the war declaration, even if it's just like plain clothes or I'm gonna, somebody's putting a bomb underneath Ari Neve's car or something like that. It's war. It's not conversation. It's not diplomacy. It's not the desire to have some sort of treaty or some sort of dispute ended. It's about engaging in a process that will lead you to victory over the other person. And that I think that's the real dark thing about everything is that the only way that you can actually be certain that you've won a war is that you've destroyed all dissent. And that's why I think it's so strongly stated that war is bad in the Star Trek universe, because it is showing off a universe that's so big, so full of wondrous things, so empty in so many ways, with so much possibility, that all of these little battles are small-minded in comparison. And I think throughout history we see the same thing. If you how many great conquerors have there been that have died within like a year of returning from their conquests, or they didn't get the fruit of it, or ended up destroying the entire organization? It's like that's the underlying statement. So I know that we're going to get at some point, maybe it'll be the last 2 minutes, Steve Shives is going to be like, well, Star Trek says terrorism is good in these circumstances. I'm sure that's going to happen.
I actually couldn't get through the other half. It's so boring. Maybe he says that the last 2 minutes. We'll just skip ahead if that's the case. But I just,
response to the terrorism to make sure we know they aren't the good guys either. Alexana also tells Riker that while the actual Ansata terrorist group only consists of about 200 people, the government keeps a list of thousands of names of people who are thought to be sympathetic to the Ansata, most of whom have apparently done nothing other than, as Alexana says, march in pro-Ansata demonstrations or participate in general strikes. Arresting people for participating in protest marches?
Oh, no.
That's not the American.
This has so much to do with the video.
But the episode's attitude toward terrorism is more complex than simply both sides suck. There's a scene I didn't mention in my reductive but witty episode summary. It takes place on the bridge, and it involves Picard and Data. Data says, I don't understand the Ansata. Their violent tactics are contrary to what my programming defines as acceptable, and yet, throughout history, methods like theirs have been proven effective. And then Data lists some examples of times when terrorism has worked to achieve political change. And Picard's like, yep. So Data says, does that mean that if all peaceful options have been exhausted, terrorism is an acceptable tactic? And Picard doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no either. He tells him, well,
because it's morally gray.
Did Data even use the word terrorist as opposed to violence?
I think Data in this scene was referring to they made up some lore about Ireland being unified in 2024, and it was this conversation that was a little sensitive to UK viewers, so they didn't show the episode.
Yeah, there were the Irish terrorists.
Yeah, they said Ireland was unified in like 2020 something. I can't remember, but it was kind of like, oh, why was this not shown? Because there was a brief mention of it, about how it's a very sensitive topic even nowadays when you talk about unification of Ireland and Scotland and all that other stuff.
Yeah, Ireland doesn't really like us Brits.
It's
a
sensitive
topic. Said about Scotland, but to a lesser extent.
Yeah. I'm Irish and I like the British, so
they make good tea.
They do. Crap beer though.
Yeah.
Look, all beer tastes like actual vomit, so
people have been trying to answer that question for centuries. And that's the end of the scene. Here's how I read that scene and the episode overall.
Oh, is it going to relate to modern standards? Oh my god,
Killing
yeah. The whole
people,
reason he made
using
this
violence.
video was because of what's been happening currently.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out.
I wonder whether this
threats
is
of
what... Yeah, go on.
Violence and fear to further political ends is bad, but sometimes it works. And terrorists like the
go out and kill a cop, guys.
Ansata don't just start killing people for no reason. The Rutians are the targets of the violence, but that doesn't make them innocent. The wrongness of the Ansata.
See, what I was trying to say and stupidly before was that it's like it's about how you justify it in your head. You're like, oh, they're not civilians. They're working for the bad guys. They're just bad guys like them. That's the mentality that it comes to, and it is an informal declaration of war to attack anybody for this. Like you're basically saying, I don't like the entire structure. I'm throwing it out, and I'm going to use violence instead of any kind of diplomacy. It's warfare. It's like maybe warfare works, but the context that I think Steve Shives is trying to relate it to is that within our own society, you can't use violence and intimidation to try and make a convincing argument. As soon as you start to blow people's shit up, you're basically saying fuck all of the legitimacy of your law, and that's the problem. That's the reason why terrorism is bad. That's the reason why people shouldn't be engaged in it. If they are terrorists, they might as well be on the other side of a war. They're antithetical to your existence, because your existence is predicated on peaceful law, right? And they're making these unlawful actions. I think that it's very dangerous to use terrorism instead of sedition and treason, because I think that those are more clear cut, and terrorism is so much more like based on who's saying it.
Yeah.
That's
and
what I was trying
now
to
Deep
say.
Space Nine does point out, and I was talking about before, where Bajorans called themselves a resistance, Cardassians called them terrorists.
Yeah. Sorry for being so like stupid about it, like semantically. It's just it gets on my nerves that people can, and not saying anybody here was, but like Steve, like, yeah, it's effective, and
Don't
there's
worry,
so much
Steve gets on
subtext.
everyone's nerves.
Sorry?
Steve gets on everyone's nerves. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is why he has such a low
Action.
viewership.
Doesn't absolve the Rutians of their responsibility for creating the situation that pushed the Ansata.
Did he even tell us why they were doing what they were doing? Just because they were warlike in the past and they lost their loved ones? Does the motive even matter? Like, we kind of need context here, Steve. What was the whole point of them doing these things? Like, that's all he had to do, was tell us why they were doing it and what happens at the end. That could have been 20 seconds.
To resort to those actions in the first place. The way the Ansata are depicted in the
Hey,
High
Glib, I have a
Ground is
question.
typical of how Star Trek.
Yeah.
Would you prefer to watch Lower Decks or this?
What? Right now?
What-
You mean just in general?
What's worse? What's worse to experience?
I think Lower Decks, to be honest, because at least Steve Shives is like making me like think like, okay, what exactly is how do I frame this to other people? You know what I mean? It's such like a disgusting topic, kind of. But Lower Decks is just like, I've seen every joke before. I knew as soon as I
Then
saw
again-
everyone's review, I was like, I think like you did a bit. I was gonna review it, but you did such a good job. I don't need to say anything.
Oh, thank you. Video in my channel in the description for covering Lower Decks. I don't think I did that good a job. If I was writing it again, I think I would have reworded things as like different discussions. As kind of, I don't think what I said was technically really wrong, but I definitely would have reworded it. But by the time I had discussions with you lot, it didn't exactly. I was like so close to finishing it that I didn't want to go through all that work. So maybe I'll go over that in at the end of the season. I do really want to pick up on a couple things, like the stupidity of apparently Tendy's a science officer, but yet she works in medicine as a nurse.
Well, science is medicine.
Well, no. There's a difference between sciences and doctors, because sciences are things like biologists,
I see what you're saying.
physicists, and because not all blue uniforms are doctors. That there's also they also represent the sciences, and they specifically bring herself up as a scientist.
Gotcha. Copy that.
The Next Generation handles villains. From the very beginning of the series, it invites us to consider the possibility that the bad guys aren't all bad. Its successor, and my personal favorite show in the franchise, Deep Space Nine, took this one step further and sought to show us how the good guys weren't always that good. And one of the best examples of this is the conflict involving Starfleet and a plucky band of outlaws calling themselves the Maquis.
So does Star Trek actually glorify terrorism? No, it doesn't. If you just gave us an example. Thank you, Steve Shives.
That
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Stream. Yeah, the Maquis, it gives them a reason why they're fighting, but then it's actively shown that, like Cisco even says to, what's his face here? I can't remember his name now. Eddington. He says to Eddington, like, what you're doing here is you're giving them false hope that they can go back to these homes and farms when they should really be going back, they can't undo the mistakes of the past. They have to build forward from here. And yeah, it was wrong that the Federation gave away their homes, but you're really not helping them by making them live in squalor on an asteroid in the middle of the Badlands. And then Eddington's very romanticized, where he believes himself as some kind of hero in a book, almost. In fact, that's what he thinks he is. He thinks he's the hero.
Well, it's again, I think that the immoral actors or the Cardassians, they're still the bad guys.
Well,
because they're the ones that are supplying the weapons and everything.
But it's Cardassians are because it wasn't just the Cardassians straight up giving weapons to the Cardassian colonists, because it was something which Ducat was actively trying to be against. It was elements of the Cardassian government which were sympathetic to the colonists, to the Cardassian colonists, and members of the Federation government which are sympathetic to the Federation colonists, that were actively giving weapons away to the colonists in the neutral zone, the demilitarized zone, that actively started fighting each other. So it wasn't just straight up the Cardassians being in the wrong or the Federation being in the wrong, because at that point, why the Cardassians aren't even doing anything, which could be. I think even a new government by that time, if I believe, or is that too early? I don't know. The Cardassians have a reforming government.
Do you think that there are good guys in this, or is just like, oh, this is a moral gray
Cardassian is all. Ducat specifically is a morally grey character, as he's never quite an antagonist. Well, he sometimes is, but he's also an ally at times, and he's never just in Deep Space Nine. Things are never just as simple as good and bad, and it always elaborates on that there is these shades of grey in the center. Ducat always believes he's in the right, but yet he has done bad things, but he justifies those bad things.
The Star Trek version of the Maquis are named after a real group of guerrillas who fought the Nazi occupation of France during World War II. The real Maquis were largely decentralized, hid out in the wilderness to avoid capture, and were fairly
that's very different context.
It isn't. Yeah, it's definitely not the same context, because it's the demilitarized zone. It's a colony. It's not like France. You know what I mean? They're not defending their homeland.
The active parts of what caused the Maquis was the fact that after the Cardassian and Federation war, they created a big line down the center of their territory where they said, okay, there's going to be no weapons here, and it's not actively Federation space, and it's not actively Cardassian space. But the problem was, in the middle of that space were some Federation colonies and Cardassian colonies, and they were upset that the fact that they had been pushed out of Federation space and be almost their homes essentially were pushed out of the Federation.
If you wanted to go for a modern analog, it's a lot more like the Balkan Wars, where there were people of one ethnicity that were stuck on one border side and people with another ethnicity, and then they started to attack each other, and the grayness of that, based on all of it being negative in the first place because people couldn't come to an agreement for whatever reason, is the problem. And that's actually the great part of it, and that's why I don't think Star Trek is glorifying it. I think that they're highlighting how bad it is, and because ultimately the Dominion War and everything that engulfs it is destructive to all of the people involved. I don't know who won that war. People got out alive, I guess.
The only thing that united them was opposition to the Nazis and their collaborators in the Vichy government. The Maquis we see in Deep Space Nine share all of those characteristics. While we meet many different Maquis leaders throughout the series, there's never any indication of a centralized organization connecting all the various leaders and groups together.
Like a lot of terrorist organizations and resistance groups, because they're groups which are decentralized, because you need to decentralize groups that if you find one cell, you're not going to find the rest. It's something they explain in Deep Space Nine, where if one cell is isolated from another cell, then if one cell is exposed, they can't expose the cell next to it.
A region of space called the Badlands, which everybody else avoids due to constant plasma storms and other hazards. And they come from different backgrounds and have different reasons for joining the fight. Many are former Federation colonists whose homes were given away
have the
to
exact
the
same reason
Cardassians.
for fighting.
What did he say? I didn't hear what he said.
He said they all have different reasons for fighting, but that's wrong. They all have the exact same reason for fighting, because they were, or at least most of them anyway. The only one which wasn't was some people in the Federation, which were sympathizers, so they actively left because of that. But a lot of them were people who were joining for the exact same reason of, hey, the Federation gave away our place. They don't care about us anymore. We're outside of Federation space and all that kind of shit.
They should have just left.
Yeah. Well, it's not quite as simple as leaving the homes and the farms and the life you have built. If you had to up and leave everything you've been building to just because someone else said so.
Federation has done that before.
Treaty. Some are disillusioned former Starfleet officers. Some are Bajorans who still want to fight the Cardassians. The most important characteristic of the Maquis, for the purposes of this video...
The other two are a minority.
The way is that they ride the line between hero and villain. They aren't shown to be as brutal as the Ansata, though they do rely on violence as their primary tactic, but they tend to focus their operations against the Cardassians.
They use bioweapons against Cardassians. What the fuck you mean not as brutal? What the fuck? Yeah, they don't ride the line between hero and villain. They're not heroes at all. Like, they like to think they're heroes, especially I've already forgotten his name again. The guy there.
Eddington.
Eddington thinks he's a hero, but he's not a hero at all. He just romanticizes himself.
Are pretty unambiguously the bad guys, and the underlying cause motivating the Maquis is a just one, regardless of how indefensible their tactics might be. The homes of colonists along the border were given away to the Cardassians by the Federation without them ever being consulted.
They were still in the neutral zone.
And since then, the Cardassians have harassed and abused them, and the Federation has been a
just
very
like
little
both
help.
sides have done.
This moral...
Both sides harassed and abused each other.
Ambiguity is spelled out in the earliest appearances of the Maquis by Ben Sisko, who views them as his enemy, who fights to stop them and preserve the peace treaty, but who also describes them as essentially good people defending their homes. Like the Ansata, the Maquis are depicted as people backed into a corner who are fighting their way out the only way they can. The show doesn't quite condone their use of violence.
Actively leave.
Yeah,
that's the thing is they don't want to.
That's why it's unjustifiable in the broader scope of Star Trek.
Yeah, they actively just don't want to leave their lives. It's understandable that they don't want to leave their lives, but they are definitely not backed into a corner. They can definitely just leave. There's nothing stopping them. In fact, you can move anywhere you want within the Federation.
The good guys are the Federation because they're just trying to uphold peace and keep things going.
To the extent, in this situation, both the Federation and the Cardassians are in the right because they are actively trying to stop a war. They don't want the people in the demilitarized zone fighting.
The issue was how they... The same issue always happens with territorial lines. That's the problem, is that people want... all the territory to be perfectly aligned, like, oh, my people over here need to be taken into consideration, and it's never clean. So again, do you want to accept the terms as legitimate or not? That's what's going to differentiate you between the state of war or the state of peace, or some one man's terrorist or not.
You had the Maquis and you had the True Way, both of which were, so one was Cardassian terrorists and one of them was Federation terrorists. So it's not exactly clear cut.
But Cardassian terrorists?
Yeah, the True Way. It was a Cardassian terrorist organization. In one of the episodes, they cause a shelter to explode and they take responsibility for it. It's just that Deep Space Nine didn't take as much of a view. They didn't focus as much on the True Ways. They did focus on things like the Maquis for
I know
example.
there's a resistance later in the show. But
No,
that's-
the true way was before the resistance. It's part of the. You can Google it.
all right, cool.
We're still supposed to mostly side with Starfleet, or at least with the particular Starfleet-aligned characters who are the show's main protagonists, but it encourages us to see their side of things and to sympathize. And even though Deep Space Nine uses the Maquis to illustrate the moral failings of Starfleet and the Federation, the conflict between the Maquis and the Cardassians nearly always takes precedence. The Maquis are the terrorist group featured most frequently and most prominently in Star Trek. They're a major presence throughout much of Deep Space Nine, especially.
No, they're not. They're really not. They sort of get sidelined most of the time.
Yeah, they have a few episodes.
Like even in Voyager, it's sort of pointless.
Yeah,
the Maquis.
The Maquis ends up just becoming part of the Federation crew. Chakotay doesn't even have any characteristics by the end of the show that he's
There's
used
no
to be a terrorist.
fight. There's no anger. I guess the only thing would be B'Elanna. She's just angry for the first 2 seasons or so, and then she mellows out, and that's it. There's barely any.
Yeah, the only conflicts is really in the first season between the
2 episodes, maybe.
Yeah, 2 episodes where you have some of the crew, like where B'Elanna, when she attacked one of the Starfleet officers, and then they want to create a mutiny over it.
It doesn't go anywhere. It's
yeah,
but that's her whole character arc. She's angry, and then she meets Tom, and then she's a mom. It's like, oh, great character arc. Oh, she's a Klingon warrior as well. Let's associate her with that. Okay, great. That's it. With what's his name, Chakotay. He's the emotion of a rock. He's like, okay, he's constantly nice, never gets angry. Oh, season 5, he likes to box. Bravo. Characterization 5 years later. That's great.
And he says something about scorpions.
Oh yeah, he has a Vision Quest drug pad thing. What the hell?
He takes drugs.
What do you do, Chakotay? I have dreams, man. That's it. That's my character. There's that one time he was about to be sequestered or whatever on a planet because of some drug that he and the captain had, so they're going to live their life together, and nothing happened. No character growth, no conflict.
That's because Voyager was for a lot of the characters were extremely static and never grew or changed.
It was just lame. Everything in Voyager was made lame. The Borg was made lame. The character conflicts.
You have such opportunity with Voyager because it was always so meh and middle of the road. Like some of the best episodes are ones like Year of Hell with the 2-parter, which is absolutely fucking brilliant. But then a lot of the time it's just so you have a fucking ship lost in fucking the other side of the galaxy, but yet they're always squeaky clean. It is almost suspension. It does break the suspension of disbelief that they are always perfectly fine. You'll have one episode where Voyager is beaten to a pulp. It's just it's fucking limping off. And then next episode, it'll be completely squeaky clean. Nothing will pass over to another episode. Everything will just be forgotten after the episode it's been done. If it's something which is really major like Year of Hell, we actively have characters dying and serious consequences like Tuvok eyes he becomes blind. That's going to be reset by a magic time button.
Yeah, there's plenty of stories of spaceships being lost in space, and I think the most recent one I can think of was Stargate Universe, where it's like, okay, that's the mission of the ship, and everyone has no idea how any of this technology works. They don't even know where to find it. They're all struggling to survive. They don't even have water.
Not to mention things like resources as well, where the engines are always running completely fine. The dilithium is barely ever a problem. Isn't brought up after the first season. They just happen to find it everywhere.
Yeah. 7 of 9 of the Doctor stole all the character work.
They didn't steal the character work, as in they're the only ones that got it.
7 of 9 was like a white slate. You could do anything with that, and they barely did much. Like they did some.
It's not like the Doctor, because the Doctor's the only one that really got an arc. a really big one. And that's not actively trying to steal it from all the other characters. It's not because they only focus on the Doctor. It's because they actively just didn't give it to them.
You know, like Kim is always an ensign. I think Paris gets demoted, then promoted. B'Elanna gets promoted. But they don't change much, if at all. And who cares about...
They get married, and that's
I know,
all that
but
really
it's
changes.
just like Tuvok, he's a Vulcan, so he barely changes. I mean, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, a lot of the characters you can look at in the show, when they start off in the show, they're exactly the same as when they end. Neelix is a character, despite having numerous episodes focused on him alone. He is the exact same character. He says, "Oh well, I'm a better person for all this." You know, the Federation made me better. It's like, you're the fucking same character from episode 1. You haven't changed. What the fuck are you on about?
Especially the seasons that take place prior to the Dominion War, and Maquis members are major characters in Star Trek Voyager as well. They are neither condemned nor condoned. So, as far as our titular question is concerned, I don't think
but
it would
that's
be fair
stupid
to say
because you actively have terrorists on your fucking ship, criminals, and there are no repercussions for that at all. Criminals. There is nothing ever brought up about it in the show. Only a handful of times that they actually do.
And it's forgotten. It's never brought up.
Yeah.
It's never doesn't mean anything.
Oh yeah, there's a time when Chakotay mentions to the crew, like with B'Elanna there, it's like, "Hey B'Elanna, do you remember that time where we destroyed that Federation ship? Oh, yeah, we released torpedoes outside of the tube while we pretended to be adrift in space." And it's like, and Janeway says, well, I'm lucky that I wasn't that captain. It's like she's talking about how he fucking murdered an entire crew of Starfleet officers, but yet Janeway's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with this person being my first officer."
Maquis represent a case of Star Trek glorifying terrorism. But there is another terrorist group, also on Deep Space Nine, who engaged in a far greater level of violence than the Maquis, and who were framed in a far more unambiguously positive light than the Maquis too.
It was just the Bajorans were slapping.
Bajoran resistance, who fought the Cardassians during the occupation.
It's brought up multiple times that Kara regrets some of the things that she had to do. It is never brought up that it was just, while you could say it's justified, it was still the people who actively did these things. There was a character who was viewed as a hero because he killed a certain goal, which was prospecting over the planet. And the context was that he killed, so people believed he fought him in this huge battle and he was sung as a hero for the resistance and he was really overplayed, when all he really did was he fell down a hill, found a naked Cardassian bathing, and he stabbed him in the neck when he went for his gun. And he regretted that because he murdered someone and he couldn't live with it. But yet people saw him kill him out of fear and thought that he did it in some kind of battle, and it was really made into something it wasn't. So even though it was a terrible person he killed, he still regretted it. And that's something which is brought up multiple times with the Bajoran resistance. They've done terrible things that they regret that, ultimately ended up, I suppose it did brought freedom to their planet, but then it's the moral gray area. Was it really right for them to do that? There were civilians who died.
The funniest thing is that they wouldn't be doing it if the Cardassians didn't try and impose their will and that kind of thing. It's the use of force to oppress another people and to engage in war with other people begets more violence, and it cascades. And even if you,
but even Bajoran civilians were killed because there were Bajoran civilians which were also acting as janitors, as clerks, who just needed a job, who just needed to do this, that, and the other.
I understand that, Shiny. That's not what I'm talking about.
I know. What?
All right. I don't know how long we should be watching this because it gets really slow. I didn't watch the rest of it. That's why. But if you guys want to keep going, we can.
It's up to you.
Let's see how far we go with this understanding of terrorism about pejorative.
I think ultimately it's up to you individually as if you think that, because obviously there's wrongs on all sides, and it's just down to, do you believe it is justified? And a lot of times the show is something where they bring up, is it justified? Is it not justified? There are characters which believe it is right, and
I'm just trying to explain it. So
it's just a categorization from one party to the other, and that's it. It's still the act of violence. You're still destroying or killing something, whether it's an individual, a group, or a country. It's the same thing for different purposes, for different reasons. It's all the context of what they're trying to do or accomplish.
Exactly.
Is represented in DS9's regular cast by someone who is one of the show's best characters, and definitely a person we should look at before we step away from this subject, Major Kira. Kira has one of the darkest backstories of any regular character in all of Star Trek. She grew up during the occupation of Bajor, when the Cardassians stole her planet's resources, controlled its government, and forced its people into slave labor, killing millions in the process. It's essentially Star Trek's version of the Holocaust, one of the darkest corners of franchise lore. When Kira was old enough, she joined the Resistance and began fighting the Cardassians. And the way the Resistance fought the Cardassians was through terrorism. And that's not me making a judgment and applying a label. Kira herself refers to what
it is. It absolutely is.
She calls herself a resistance.
You're saying that the Jewish resistance were terrorists? Okay, they're good. I'm sure that they're going to be pleased with that.
Well, actually, in the show, Kira does call herself a terrorist at times.
I understand that, but that doesn't deny the fact that he's also doing it. Maybe it's not just, but he is doing the judgment.
So this is where Star Trek is glorifying terrorism with Kira. Really?
Yeah. It's really not glorifying it at all, as I said before.
So we went through all of this to get to the actual example. Why did he start here?
Well, he gave other examples, and
which
then that wasn't glorifying, which weren't glorifying terrorism. And then, it comes to this, which still isn't glorifying terrorism.
I think he just uses Star Trek as an excuse to talk about Star Trek. I think that's
the idea that he gives two examples where it isn't glorified and it's posed more as a moral question, and now jumps to this. It's no, but this is still why Star Trek glorifies terrorism.
It's like Munich, the movie Munich by Steven Spielberg. Does that glorify terrorism?
I really think he's just doing this because of recent political events. It's too recent. It is far too recent.
That's what I was annoyed by.
And he's just gushing about his knowledge of Star Trek because he likes Star Trek. So it's his two passions, politics and Star Trek.
And the jabs he's made at police as well.
That was weird.
But it's okay to be terroristic against police and shit. Like, it's fucking annoying, man. It's like, just declare war. You know what I mean? Instead of couching it in terrorism, does Star Trek glorify terrorism? Does Star Trek glorify acts of violence on people? No. No, it doesn't. No, I won't kill him. That was the whole point of the Gorn episode. Like, at what point, how twisted do you have to be to say, does Star Trek glorify violence, war, guerrilla war, and then terrorism on that level?
You could have said, does Star Trek glorify terrorism? No. Here's an example. No. There we go. There we go. End the video. It took 5 seconds.
The edited version of this video would be that.
You might as well just say, does Star Trek present a variety of ideas?
Yeah, exactly.
This may be, you may as well just call it, does Star Trek reason Black Lives Matter or in Antifa?
No, just leave it as does Star Trek.
You could put it, a lot of his Trek actually videos, you could actually dumb them down to does Star Trek. And that's about all of his videos.
Star Trek is a 20-second supercut of just Steve going, well, yes, and maybe no, and yes, and I don't know. Like, that would be it. Every single topic.
He's like, according to Star Trek, everything that I believe is validated.
Star Trek is glorifying terrorism and occasionally triumphant.
By downward thrust.
Resistance as terrorism repeatedly throughout the series. She acknowledges targeting Cardassian military personnel and civilians. She admits she regrets a lot of what she did, but she also says unequivocally that she did what she had to do because she and her fellow Bajorans were fighting for survival. Even
Literally
when Kira
every person that justifies their violence attempts to do that. It was an existential threat. Every group.
You know, the whole
That's the
everyone
saving
thinks they're the hero of their story kind of thing.
Exactly.
Kira actively regrets the thing she's done.
directly confronted in the episode The Darkness and the Light by a Cardassian civilian who was disfigured and driven a little bonkers by a terrorist attack she helped carry out. She sticks to her guns, or bombs in this case. I was innocent, the Cardassian Solaran says. I wasn't in the military. I did Gul Piroc's laundry, for God's sake. And Kira says 15 million Bajarans were killed during the occupation. You want me to feel sorry for you because you were injured in an attack even though you were innocent? None of you should have been on our planet in the first place.
See, that's what I was saying earlier. That's the perspective change. You don't think that any of them should be there in the first place. They're all legitimate, so they're all legitimate targets. That's the perspective of that. But yeah, go off on how Star Trek glorifies that, even though Kira is like the conflicted character on the show.
Occupied our land, enslaved, and murdered us for 50 years. It doesn't matter whether you were a soldier or whether you ironed shirts for a living. You were all guilty. A couple of seasons earlier, Kira even chastises Thomas Riker, who has revealed himself as a member of the Maquis, for not being enough of a terrorist. When Thomas hijacks the Defiant with Kira aboard and sets out...
No. You're taking that out of fucking context.
You need to be more of a terrorist for Federation powers. Come on. Only through terrorism can we free ourselves.
She strongly disagrees with Riker. She believes that he's doing the wrong. She's actively trying to sabotage what he's doing. And when she's saying, criticizing his fucking terrorism, she's actively trying to push him. She's trying to push him into getting caught.
To attack Cardassian outposts, Kira tells him that he's thinking too much like a Starfleet officer setting out on a legitimate military mission.
She's trying to manipulate him. You fucking moron.
Okay, I think we could stop here. I think, Steve is obviously playing his own game, and it took him this long to get to it, and now he's leaving out context. It's just... I didn't even know what the first 20 minutes were all about at this point, because he just kept rambling on about his definition and examples that weren't true, or at least to his argument's behalf. We can keep going, guys, but obviously we know what he's going to say.
I really kind of want to see if he is actually going down the route of making the links to what's happening today, because I know he has to fucking do it.
Yeah, he's got to do it. That's what I've been expecting from the beginning.
Let's just zoom ahead.
There's a part of the American Civil War, I guess.
Many of my fellow Americans categorically reject all forms of political violence, or at least they think they do. Most of those same folks celebrate our nation's independence every 4th of July, an independence which was secured by fighting a violent revolution. But
yeah, you guys really have done that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have fought for your freedom and your right to survive. That was so
then
bad.
again, that is a much more complex issue.
Britain tax.
Is it a much more complex issue?
Because it's what started was Britain defended America from France, but ended up using up its money in the process. When Britain said, "Hey, could you pay for us defending you?" America said no. And then he said, okay, well, we're just going to tax you. And then both sides were constantly being dicks to each other, which led to a rise in just a lot of tension to the point where it just exploded.
Is that what they teach in British school?
No, they don't actually teach the British.
As well as I understand it, it was the 7 Years' War that England won, but in the doing so, they became flat broke. So they taxed the fuck out of America and many other countries.
It was defending America from France.
And America went, hey, fuck you, we're not going to pay that money. And so with for some reason with France, they pushed England back until they got bored and did something else. But then, you know, France and America were broke and they decided to have their own revolutions because France decided, hey, why are we broke and yet these people still live in palaces with their nice dresses? Hey, that's a good point. Let's cut some heads off till we figure out the answer. Hence the French Revolution. Meanwhile, because we now have money, we went off and conquered the rest of the world. Well, a third of it anyway. And did people like it? Not at all. But we had the Industrial Revolution, so who the fuck was going to complain?
There you go.
So
here's a good summary.
Yeah, here's a super chat from Roan Harushin. I kind of put him on the same level with Matt. It's he likes to talk, and I don't know if he has a script or actually I think he does have a script, and he just embellishes like, oh, this is really clever. I'm going to say this.
Yeah. The way he's looking at the camera, he definitely has a script. You can see that he's always constantly looking down just below the lens.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Star Trek admits that it's possible to conditionally condone terrorism, but even in the example of Kira and the Bajarans, it shows terrorism to be the tragic consequence of an utterly broken, unjust system. It's not.
Here we go.
Good. It's not something we should turn to eagerly. It's not something we should celebrate. It's awful. It's death and destruction. And even if you remain convinced,
big butt coming,
that you did what you had to do, you can still spend the rest of your life regretting that you had to do it, as we see is the case with Kira. She never apologizes for having been a terrorist. She never hides from it, but she also doesn't think of herself as a hero. In fact, she tells Tom Riker on the Defiant, the terrorists don't get to be heroes. I'm not so sure about that.
And she actively regrets the things she had to do.
Yeah, I think he did take part in some events. He was incarcerated for a bit. So, yeah, Nelson Mandela. There you go.
And obviously, Gandhi invented the nukes and then nuked the world.
Yeah.
God damn it, Gandhi.
I don't think Star Trek is trying to tell us that we should get into the habit of condoning terrorism, and that's not what I'm saying either.
Okay.
What are you saying?
In act, you are condoning terrorism.
What I am saying,
on what terrorism
and
means.
I think this fits in with how Star Trek has treated the subject over the years, is that if we want to stop terrorism, it can't be viewed as simply a law enforcement or military issue. The long-term solution to terrorism isn't to hunt down and kill or arrest all the terrorists.
If they are actively doing something wrong, yes, you stop the terrorists. If they're actively doing something wrong.
The whole point of terrorism is that it's a legal term. It's a crime. That's the point of the whole thing. A government will declare somebody a terrorist based on whatever is the criteria that they're using, the definition that they're using, and they will prosecute it. You have to accept the legitimacy of the side of what would be said to be a criminal to say that it's justifiable. So you have to say it's not actually terrorism because the people that are claiming that a crime is being committed are wrong. You have to say that the justice system that is describing somebody as a terrorist is wrong to justify terrorism, which means you're probably taking a stance against the government, or at least taking a neutral stance and saying, I think that there is a legitimate grievance here. There has to be some kind of legal framework for this to work, or else it's not terrorism anymore, because it's all about the unlawful usage of something. And the law is defined by the Constitution or whatever form of document, and then that's enforced by the government. That's why government is involved in terrorism, and terrorists are usually non-state actors. That's the whole point of it. And it's modern because governments are so powerful with the civil service that they have behind them, all the technology, that they can have a standing military destroy another standing military if there's any kind of lapse in technology or economics. And therefore, the only way to fight is through insurgency. That's the modern paradigm. And that's what the fifth generational warfare gets into and all this bullshit. So,
and why
the 2070 paradigm shift.
Well, the example he first showed was with Spock blowing up the weapons cache or the ammo dump. which is a very specific target for a specific cause of two military organizations fighting against each other.
That's called sabotage.
Yeah.
In the military sense. That's why you have to stress that like terrorist is designated by whoever has the authority of the law. Now, if you disagree with it, like I said before, you're gonna be like, no, of course I'm not a terrorist because I don't think that you're legitimate. You can't tell me who a terrorist is.
It's also very context heavy as well.
Right. So like
because there's a difference between,
yeah,
let's say, terrorists from one country attacking the United States, or a difference between Bajorans rising up against their country, their world being invaded, or let's say domestic terrorism, which is being grown within their own borders, who are trying to attack the government. And then even then, it depends on if the government itself is oppressive, or if the terrorists are. Could the terrorists find a peaceful resolution? Usually the question is, if the terrorists can find a peaceful resolution, then what they're doing is wrong.
Well, there wouldn't be terrorists if they weren't committing on unlawful usage of political violence or intimidation. But usually when terrorism comes up, it's because somebody feels as though the government is treating them illegitimately, and that the law is no longer legitimate. You know what I mean? So like then it becomes an issue of war. It's the gray space in between war and insurgency. It's like, okay, now is the time for violence because we have no more recourse, but we also don't have the ability.
But then there are people which
military.
So we have to
try and intimidate people.
There are people who don't wait for the diplomatic solution and jump straight to the violence.
Absolutely, there's all sorts of people that are like that, but
which is why it's very context heavy.
You have to reject the law to be a terrorist.
Okay, so Lancelot 652, is he trying to make a connection to Antifa and BLM?
Yes, absolutely. That's where we're headed. That's where
he hasn't stated it yet.
He's heavily inferred it, and I think that's where it's going to end. He's inferred it. He's made jokes. He's made jabs. I think that's what he's gone about.
We're curious why he brought the topic up and did it the way he did, because he sort of just meandered for 30 minutes.
He made very specific references to modern day, but he's not explicitly said that it's about. He's never said Antifa. He's never said Black Lives Matter, but he has heavily inferred.
Trying to frame Spock as a terrorist was just like, are you kidding me? Like, are you paying attention, Steve? It was kind of silly. So,
is to address the underlying conditions that created the terrorists in the first place. That's the crucial point that the Rutians are unable to see in the high ground, and that the Federation and the Cardassians both refuse to deal with when it comes to the Maquis.
And how's that related to an organization like ISIS, who are just religious extremists?
Well, that's why the terms are all specific. I mean, it's like terrorists. Again, it's just law.
There's a difference between an oppressed minority and then some religious extremists. So, well, let's go fuck these people up over here that haven't done anything.
For problems that don't involve terrorism too. Right now, all over the world, but particularly in the United States, people are protesting in the streets against long-standing injustices like institutionalized racism.
Okay, yeah,
we did it, guys.
And remember, if you don't like Black Lives Matter, you're obviously a racist, because the name says that Black Lives Matter, and if you're against it, then you don't believe Black Lives Matter.
Can someone please point out the institutions that are racist in America? They have to be there. Everyone talks about it.
They'll use the existence of the police, or they'll use prisons.
Prisons are racist?
Or because they believe that they use statistics like, well, a majority of black people are in prisons or something, despite being only the population. Or they'll say, oh, well, black people pulled over 20% of the time, or something like that, more than this, that, and the other.
Systemic oppression. They always claim redlining laws like gerrymandering and stuff, which is more about economics than it is race. They claim all this stuff from the 1960s. They desperately want there to be some sort of racial thing going on. It's just not happening.
We do know there are actual supremacists, white supremacy, this and that. They are in the very minority, and they don't control anything.
And they are very oppressed. They are oppressed for a very good reason. As in, like, it's a mindset we don't agree with, and we completely ostracize because it's stupid, and
no, the majority of the world
not acceptable.
just wants to get over.
Let's see what he has to say about these people or people against them. Let's just. I'm wondering where he
No
goes
one
with
likes
this.
white supremacists. No
So
one.
because Kira did this in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, it's okay for you to say okay.
So it's
Police
the idea.
brutality and government corruption.
Police brutality, okay. Individuals, police that. Did you guys actually watch the video of what's his name, George Floyd?
Yeah, I did.
That was eye-opening.
Yes, of course. Then it's why they didn't release it.
I think
Was that the guy who was like bleeding on the ground and stuff?
No, the guy that set off all of these fucking riots was high on fentanyl and meth and all this stuff, and he was totally inebriated behind the wheel of a car, couldn't respond, didn't know what was going on, and then was like foaming at the mouth and shit. He was fucked up, and then
he was asked to be laid
arrest
on the ground of the car, and he couldn't breathe. He lay on the ground of the actual ground, and it was just like this constant nagging, trying to appease him, and he kept flipping out, and it was crazy. The cops are like, "Listen, guy, chill out. We're not going to shoot you. Get in the car." He couldn't do it. He got out of the car, and it was this whole thing.
We are fast approaching the last 2 minutes where he's going to claim that people that are oppressed in America should be able to throw fireballs at people or something.
Yeah.
Actually, those on the conservative end of the political spectrum have fixated on the negative aspects of the protests. They're disruptive. They've engaged in
No
acts.
shit.
You mean like the actual
Vandalism.
terrorist
No shit.
aspects?
That
The
if you are
violence and
actively
intimidation?
if you're actively doing negative things, then people are going to say, hey, yeah, stop, please. Don't fucking cause this shit because it's antithetical to fucking everyone. If you're actively destroying stores, if you're actively hurting people unjustly, then fuck off. Why should we treat you seriously?
Well, that's terrorism.
It's not needed. It's not, you don't need to do all these actions. It's not helping anyone's cause. You're just doing it because you want to be violent. You're using it as an excuse.
Well, they're doing it to try and overthrow the government and install Marxism because they've admitted that they're Marxists. So there you go.
While downplaying or completely ignoring the reason those protesters are there. Star Trek hasn't depicted street
Hey,
protests.
it doesn't matter the reason why they're there, and they're not ignoring the reason why they're there. It's what you're doing is. If what you're doing is such a horrible thing, then it doesn't matter why you're doing it. It's the fact you're fucking doing it. It's like, hey, it doesn't matter why I'm beating my wife, but I'm doing it.
Steve Shives is so smart that he's going, does Star Trek actually glorify terrorism, and inadvertently labeling Black Lives Matter as a terrorist? You did the job we wanted you to.
Oh my god, that is beautiful.
That's the justification here.
Well, that's one message to interpret from whatever he's talking about.
That is absolutely beautiful. I love it.
Where is he going with this? We still don't know.
We're seeing right now, but it has dealt with riots precipitated by widespread economic and social injustice, as seen in the classic DS9 two-parter past tense.
That is a very different context of
the George Floyd
people.
protests are just like this Deep Space Nine episode I watched the other day.
That is very different because it was the government actively pushing homeless people into this area, and because they didn't know what to do with the homeless problem, and that is very different. Very, very.
That's happening. That's happening in my neighborhood. In a parking lot right now, they have a bunch of homeless people because they don't know what to do. My life is more like past tense part one than fucking Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matters protest is more like some sort of Romulan plot to take over the Republic.
It's like, well, yes, Steve, remove all the fucking context from episodes. Remove what's actually fucking happening. Project as much as you fucking want to on these episodes, which have nothing to do, and try and misconstrue everything. So, oh, well, in this episode, Major Kira is supporting terrorism when you're completely ignoring the fact that she's actively trying to stop the McKee and Thomas Riker and actively trying to get him to fuck up by provoking him to attack a target, which he's gonna get caught.
Isn't that the episode where they go back in time or something?
No, the one where Thomas Riker's there. It's
no, this one.
This one. Oh yeah, they accidentally go back in time.
Okay, That's probably why I don't remember it. Is all the time ones are just like, oh god.
It's weird. I think it's supposed to be in like 2020, but they have really outdated computers. I believe it's supposed to be in 2020 or something like that, or at least some 2015 maybe.
All right. No, I just remember it was just such a strange episode. It was two-parter. Like, oh.
1 second. Let me Star Trek past tense. If they go back to
If you do not give us what we want, then Shiny will stay in LiteratureDevil's basement. We will expect 12 tons of latinum.
I'm always fucking stuck in Letter's basement. All the time.
It's 2024.
2024? All right, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I just found it here in part 1.
Right, I'm excited. We're really close, guys. We're really close.
Yeah.
Treated the people responsible for the Bell riots the same way it treated the Ansada and the Maquis, by encouraging us to hear them out.
You know what the Bell riots? Oh yeah, he's saying it. Yeah,
keep going.
But the thing is, though, he was actively trying to stop violent terrorism and actively trying to promote peaceful negotiations. And if in fact they went violent, then it would have fucked everything up. So this actually worked more against your argument, Mr. Shives, because they're actively promoting, don't be violent. Don't murder hostages.
Terrorism's not okay, but maybe no.
In their shoes, instead of automatically dismissing their grievances due to their tactics, look for a solution to the problem that would allow the situation to be resolved in a way that was satisfactory to everybody, and examine our own role in creating that problem so that next time maybe we can find that solution before more extreme measures.
They actually had to take a part of an historical figure died saving their lives after they got thrown back time in history. So they had to take the place of the historical figure. So it's not something it's something they had to do in order to keep history the same.
Necessary. Does Star Trek actually glorify terrorism? No. It tells us terrorism is ugly.
Well done, Steve.
Wow. I guess he did some research and actually paid attention. It's amazing.
That's so cool. Come on, Steve, tell us the point in this video. Come on.
It's kind of just waffle, really, at this point.
Yeah, it is all just waffle.
Like a social commentary at the end.
But we've got to this point. We can finish it.
Ugly, destructive, tragic, but sometimes justifiable if the injustice inflicted upon a people
heavily relying on context, Steve. Heavily relying on context.
Well, it's terrorism. Justifying terrorism.
I don't think if Steve Shives went up to a Black Lives Matter group and said, "Yeah, guys, embrace your terrorism," they go, "What the fuck?" That's not what we're doing.
They'd probably be like, "Okay," and then rob him.
Them to fight it any other way. How do we determine if that is the case? How should we distinguish between unjustifiable and justifiable terrorism? Sometimes the distinction is as clear as the difference between Terra Prime and the Bajoran Resistance. Sometimes it's a lot more subtle. Unfortunately, Star Trek can't really help us with that.
It's not subtle
because it's a fictional universe.
No, it's not subtle.
You can't learn, guys.
It's subjective to whatever side you're on. If you're on the side of the law of the organization, then you're going to think that whoever's going against the law is a terrorist if they're doing what fits the definition of terrorist. If you're on the other side, then you're going to think that you're at war with legitimate targets. You're not a terrorist because the law isn't legitimate. So it's totally on what side you're on. The justification of which has to do with not about terrorism itself, because you can't really justify that, because what do people think of? They think of bombing civilians. And like as we were talking earlier, it's ethically that's not it's not justified ethically. What is happening is that they are trying to try out military strategies. It's a form of warfare by any other name. You want to justify which side is right in the primary what they're fighting over. That's the actual thing.
to anybody with any kind of ethics, obviously any kind of violence is going to be abhorrent. Now, what is it that we can do to solve this problem? Because ultimately, you know, if it's going to come to blows, then it's going to be force that determines it. Is it going to be force, or is it going to be by our agreement and choice? That's what Star Trek is always fighting for, is coming to some sort of terms so that everybody can get back to exploring and doing the peace thing. That's the problem here, is that when we go, oh, what about terrorism being this gray area? You know, sometimes it's justified. And we can use an example of the American the American Revolution or whatever, where they're basically saying, oh yeah, we're not British subjects anymore. We're a sovereign thing, and we're going to write a Declaration of Independence, and now we're doing this. At that point, they were saying that they were a nation state, independent, that they were their own thing. So that's not the same thing. You know what I mean? And ISIS, as soon as they claimed that they were a nation state, then it just became war. The terrorism aspect has to do with the unlawful aspect. If there's an international crimes court, then obviously that crimes court is the authority in the area. That's how we tried the war crimes. There had to be some sort of organizing government to say, oh, you're the bad guy, you're the bad guy, you're the bad guy. But if you want to be revisionist, if you want to be subjective, you could say, well, yeah, of course, you know, when they dropped the nuclear bomb or did the bombing of Dresden. And it's like, yeah, this is why instead of talking about terrorism, it's more conducive to talk about ethics in terms of the geopolitics thing, because we're trying to solve the problem, not justify violence. That's what this is actually doing here. It's saying maybe BLM could be justified in violence. You know, police, maybe if they get blown up, it's not too bad. Like, fuck you, dude. Police, civilians, military, they're all life. They're doing something for a purpose. They're trying to support something. Their involvement, their innocence, according to you, depending on if they're a justifiable target or not, personally is irrelevant to me, because I see the main thing. We're fighting for an idea of something, and the justification is that idea.
All right, the difference between freedom fighter and terrorist is whose side you stand on. That's pretty much it.
I mean, yeah.
Is remind us to recognize and defend our common humanity, encourage us to listen to others when they speak about the inequalities and disadvantages they face, and inspire us to continue working toward a world where one day no one will think bullets and bombs are necessary, because words will work just as well.
Hey,
yes, I would love to live in a perfect world where no one did harm to anyone for any stupid reason.
You know, yes, Steve, we agree that you shouldn't be doing terrorist acts, and you should be finding peaceful solutions.
That was cool.
Yeah, go do that.
I'm glad that it took so long for him to say no.
Yeah.
But then he actually goes, no, but no.
You might as well have started with, is Star Trek glorifying terrorism? No, but let me talk about the political climate of America for 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's like, is terrorism in Star Trek justified? No, but also BLM can burn down shit. It's okay. It's cool.
All he had to do was do a 2-minute summary of all the stuff he watched. This is what happens in this episode. This doesn't glorify terrorism. This is what happens in this episode. Well, Kira's kind of crazy, but that's okay. It's justified. Blah blah blah. Do all your points that you need. You don't have to describe the entire episode. Why did he do that?
The obvious question is, why did we do this?
Well, there's a relation to the thing that I'm reviewing, Mr. Robot, and the Egyptian Arab Spring, because it's part of what the writer was writing. Like, that's the inspiration. So I say that in my review, and I have videotape that shows what was on the news that would be visually inspired, and then also like audio and interviews from the guy who's explaining why he did what he did. And it's like, at no point do you have to talk about your like justification of morals or if that's a good thing or not. I don't have to talk about that. All I have to do is report what this thing says. He didn't have to bring up BLM. There was no reason. He could have talked about any terrorist kind of thing. But it's funny that he brings up BLM, because that subconsciously is revealing, like I said before, that he considers that kind of violence terrorism, and that it's just possibly justifiable. Or no, it's not justifiable. What we should do is listen to them and give them reparations. That's what he really wants. He wants to negotiate with the terrorists. That's his solution.
Like that.
Verbal terrorists are the top
terrorists.
Oh,
Don't use bullets, use words. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You know, it's like, use your words against civilians, everybody. Go out there and verbally terrorize civilians.
Yeah. Freedom of speech is really, really loudly. It's like, oh, great. Thank you.
I love Star Wars the OT, and I hate Rey. She's a Mary Sue.
A verbal bomb.
Well, that was long, and we went through about 2 other videos which were equally worse, but for different reasons.
Yeah, sorry for being so muddy about my explanation there about the perspective thing. I wasn't coming out correctly. I've never had to.
Well, cowboys like to play in the mud.
With Deep Space Nine and other such stories, they always frame the villain like Dukat is obviously a villain, but there's redeeming qualities and things we like about him, but he's still a villain. He's still the bad guy.
Well, he's never just straight up the villain because he has been shown as an ally and someone for the.
He plays ball once in a while.
He's only really straight villain towards the very end.
Oh no, he's a villain throughout the series.
At the beginning of the series, I don't think there's any time where they're actively against him as an antagonist.
There are times when he helps out. Again, there are times when he plays ball. He gets along. There are times when he occupies the station again, and then he becomes a redcoat for the other religious group that wants to kill the wormhole aliens. So, but he's ultimately a villain and the foil to Cisco.
Ultimately, yes, but at least if you're looking in the first couple seasons, I don't think it's as simple as describing him as just being a villain. It's not really that.
All right, I guess he's the main antagonist. How's that?
Oh, because even then he's not always antagonistic.
Yeah, but that's fine.
You can say he's not a good person.
But then Cisco is not the protagonist. He's just the guy.
Well, no, because we are actively. Well, no, because he's actively the protagonist. He's the person part of the protagonist,
bad things.
The person we're following.
He kills
people.
But
the difference between someone doing good things and bad things and being the protagonist, the antagonist. The protagonist, the person we're following, and the antagonist, someone who's actively against the protagonist and being an obstacle.
That's the best part of Deep Space Nine, yeah. Is that it's not so cut and dry, but at the same time, I think that the coolest thing about Star Trek is that it consistently has a singular ethic to it.
Yeah,
here are morals, here are ethics. This is what we think is good and bad, and we'll show characters doing that, and we might go over here. But at the end of the day, this is you know what I mean. Everybody gets their just desserts in the Dominion War, in my opinion. Like they still want to have the Federation be shown in this positive light, and it's such an insult to say like, oh, the Federation would condone this kind of terrorism or do this kind of terrorism. And the Maquis and all that, like the Maquis are dumb in my opinion for not trying to come up with an alternative option. But that's what the point was, is that whole thing was kind of a bad thing for everybody instead of getting along like you're supposed to in classic Trek.
The very last conflict, it sets up this huge. Well, they just have a huge battle. And then, they finally get to the last system in Cardassian space where they've all lined up. This is all of Starfleet, all of the Romulans, all of the, I think the Cardassians at the same time, and while also having all of the Klingons against all of the Dominion forces. And it's going to be one hell of a bloody bath. And there's going to be a lot of death. But then they managed to find a solution, which is, hey, if we give you the cure for your people, we can, you can stand down, you can, pay for the actions you've done, and we'll allow you to peacefully go back through the wormhole. We won't mess with you, you don't mess with us. And it ends up ending it peacefully rather than ending it in a bloodbath.
One thing I didn't realize was there's a series of third parties that have to do all these interactions with the main characters, whether it's the Pa Wraiths or the Jem'Hadar or the Romulans. It's always, once we deal with them, then we can deal with the main conflict. So there's lots of Star Trek episodic moments where they didn't have to go that route because they were ramping up to a war ending and ended up becoming a religious time issue. I don't know exactly what was going on with Cisco there at the end, but that was his whole destiny to do something, and it was like, okay,
he became in the writer's description, he became a god because, and the reason why they did this is because, the reasoning is something I quite question. So they said a lot of this Starfleet captains become gods to their audience. So we thought if we literally made our fucking captain become a god.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't have any problem with the idea of Cisco leaving and joining the Prophets for whatever, but it's more like the the motivation behind it. It's like, let's make Cisco a god. It's like, wait, what is a god? I
Yeah.
thought he was just the emissary, and now he's with the prophets.
Yeah, the
I think-
Jesus imagery was a bit too strong.
I think that we can all agree that out of all of the civilizations that exist in Star Trek, as you know, in general, the one that we would want to live in is the Federation, because they have the most idealistic society with the most amount of benefits. And
I would say
the
it
most-
depends. If it's the Federation in Lower Decks and Discovery and Picard, fuck no.
No. TOS and TNG to Deep
Yes.
Space Nine, just in general, living within the Federation. And the alternative, I think, is like if you were trying to find another civilization, you'd be instantly running into all the issues that all of the episodes are about. You know, the Ferengi, it's like, well, geez, I don't really want to. That sounds like a lot of work to just like stop people from eating me alive. And Klingons, it seems too brutish and violent. And so, I mean, maybe Vulcans. I might get a little bored, but I like the Vulcans.
Well,
It might be
Vulcans
the
are part of the
alternative.
Federation, so
Yeah,
they're
I
not
mean, but
really-
that's the, you know what I mean? That's the whole thing, is that they're anybody that's logical, their culture is part of the Federation. And then outside of that, you have Romulans, and you have antagonizing empires that have other ambitions that are not in line with the Federation. I think that what they're trying to imply is that there's some sort of unification within the Federation that allows all of the different species and stuff to thrive, whereas the other civilizations are trying to dominate as if they haven't gotten to the sort of post-scarcity environment that the Federation has, which I've always found interesting.
So what you're saying is we should align our society on the lines of the lobsters.
No, I'm saying this is day 4 of not knowing where Jordan Peterson is. If you have seen Jordan Peterson, please give me a message. I will send the dogs to help him.
He goes, have you seen this lost dog? He goes by the name of John Peterson, sometimes Jordo. He likes to quote philosophy a lot of the time. He may be found at some university. If you find him, please call this number on screen now.
Yes.
So, guys, we went through 3 videos as best we could, and I think we did a pretty decent job for 3 hours and a half.
We did.
Keep those suggestions coming. We knocked at least 3 from our list. We're still going strong.
Not the first one.
Well, that was, I'm not even sure why.
Oh my god, Urban Acolyte.
That was a mess. That was just,
Again, we should at least vet these things. Like, just, you don't even have to watch the entire thing.
well,
Just
I
at least-
watched the first minute. I thought, okay, there's plenty of us to talk about, but he just kept rambling on and random, like Tai Chi and whatever the hell that was about. It's just like, what?
Sometimes you don't want to lift dumbbells. What the what?
What does this have to do with the topic?
At least he didn't say
And
that it
then he
glorified
talks-
terrorism.
And then he talks about something he heard of. Like he said and then like a quick rant, like, oh, do you really believe that just because they don't talk about Ryan Johnson's trilogy means it's not happening? From I've heard the word on the street.
The word on the street, yeah.
The word on the street is that the Ryan Johnson's trilogy and this other trilogy by D&D, they're going to be connected.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like he's pulling it out of his fucking ass. He wants it to be true, but just because you make it up doesn't mean it's going to become true, Mr. Acolyte.
Jordan did nothing wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Good lord.
It's not that simple.
Clone
right.
lives matter.
Well,
True.
Gentlemen and fellow watchers, thanks for tuning in. If any suggestions, please leave them in the suggestions section of the Discord. Check out these gentlemen's channels on the
Yes, I just released the video another day talking about Star Trek Lower Decks, which Glib thinks I did very well at.
Yes,
I'd
check
call
it
him
out.
over Meba. He thinks it's very good, so yeah, check it out.
I have to go watch that EFAP 100 collab video because
Watch out for a couple of people in the comments. Don't get into huge arguments with them because I get notifications every fucking time. I wake up just a ding, 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 ding.
And if you haven't seen Voice in the Radio's T. Ross video, you got to check it out.
Yes,
Part 1.
it's good.
Thing. I was going to say, Smud, you're going to be on EFAB 100, are you not? At some
supposedly, I haven't. There's been no organization. I got a DM from Mahler, and that was that. So
yeah.
I guess I am.
Good, lovely. Okay.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you real soon. Have a good night.
Bye.